Okay, first race of day 2 of the 2022 NCAA Championships is semifinal 3 of the Division I 8s. And the progression here, it's 5 boats across. We see all clean starts across the field, beautiful flat water. And the progression is that the top 3 are going to advance to the C final in the Division I 8s. And then the bottom 2 finishers in this race will go to the D final. Early fast start here, Lindsay, at 250 from Syracuse. It's really the only boat that's kind of popped out.
It's only 250 meters in at this point, so they've used their high strokes off of their start to get them out in front. Maybe that's part of their strategy, give them a little bit of confidence as they build down the race course. But again, once they get through that first 250, they're going to be looking to lengthen out just a little bit, even if it's their first lengthen, to get them one step closer to their base rhythm. But certainly by 400 or 500 meters in, which is where we are about now, almost about to cross into that second 500 of the race, all of these crews will want to be lengthened out one more time to make sure that they are in their most efficient base rhythm. One big breath, listen to your coxswain, sit strong, open your eyes, big push. And as we say that, Syracuse did take the early lead, but it is Oregon State who wants to very methodically move right along with them, probably push into the lead.
Here come the Beavers in lane 4. Beavers in lane 4 have almost brought it to even here at 600 meters with your early leader, Syracuse. And really everybody is going with the Beavers as well. This is an extremely competitive race at this point. So you had Syracuse that was out maybe 4 seats on the whole field early, and now it's dead level up front between Oregon State and Syracuse, and then it is super close behind. It looks like maybe I would give third place at the moment to Gonzaga right in front of us in lane 5, but it's hard to see the 2 bows across the water from us, but it's Northeastern and BU are stroke for stroke over there, and they're probably maybe 2 seats behind Gonzaga. So all 5 boats at 750, Lindsay, are still connected.
And some of the rowing that we've seen come out of Oregon State the last couple of days is that they do pick up speed, move very gradually down the course. You won't necessarily see a major move out of them, but you will see them attempt to take just 1 inch, 2 inches per stroke to gradually lengthen a lead and gradually push themselves away from the rest of the field. And just as David said, in here in lane 5 on the near side is Gonzaga looking to go with Oregon State, and by virtue of doing so, that will help them move a little bit farther into Syracuse. Even though they're 2 lanes over, being close to the leader, being next to Oregon State, will help them stay right in it. Coming out of the reps yesterday, Oregon State and Syracuse are some of the favorites. Gonzaga might potentially be in there with them, having come up in the higher places through their repechages, so keep an eye on those center lanes.
So Gonzaga, they really showed a great second 500. Now they're starting to get caught by those 2 boats on the outside or furthest from the wave attenuator where we are in the commentary car. That's Northeastern and BU. Obviously 2 Boston crews, maybe even see each other out on the Charles River sometimes. It is still Oregon State, and every time Oregon State drops in the water, they're taking a couple of inches on second place Syracuse. Remembering the progression, you got to be top 3 to move into the C final, and then the bottom 2 boats will be in the D final. So you got to be top 3. All of the qualifying, all of the times coming in, you got to throw it out the window as they come through 1250. It is Oregon State by half a length over Syracuse, Syracuse by 3/4 of a length over Gonzaga. Gonzaga holding tough and staying ahead probably by about 4 seats of those 2 boats that are adjacent to one another, Northeastern and BU.
And looking to clinch one of those top 3 spots by virtue of getting into the C final. That would be for places 13 through 18 here at this 2022 NCAA Championship. And just as we move through this third 500, it is Oregon State, but Syracuse has certainly answered their push and is looking like they're actually elevating to sprint a little bit early because they want to solidify a spot. That's Syracuse in lane 3. Looking as though the emotion is helping lift them. They want to help solidify a spot in that C final for their team.
This is kind of what we expected, Adrian. These semifinals are extremely exciting races. This progression has put boats together that are very similar in speed. We're going to see all throughout the morning. Awesome racing. We'll hand it off to you. It's Oregon State ahead of Syracuse and Gonzaga.
That's right. And Oregon State just very patient, very confident. They're having a great NCAA championship experience here. So good to see them leading this semifinal basically from wire to wire. And as Lindsay had said, just patient all the way through the first 1,500 meters. And as we come into the final strokes here, Syracuse on a charge, seeing if they can take a little bit of that Oregon State lead away. Gonzaga and Northeastern also very close to each other. We're going to see what Northeastern has rowing out of lane 2 as they attempt to pull even with Gonzaga, maybe get into one of those top 3 spots. But Gonzaga, a very, very tough crew from Spokane, Washington. They are a perpetual champion of the WCC. This is a performance for them that they hope to improve upon from last year. And here we go, last 250 meters here. For Oregon State, the Beavers coming through their final strokes to make it in to that sea-level final, followed just behind them with the orange of Syracuse. Syracuse on a furious charge here. They have actually taken over a few seats from Oregon State's lead. So coming all the way down to the final strokes here, it will be Oregon State just barely holding off Syracuse. Gonzaga in that 3rd position. Boston also surging into that 4th position, just ahead of Northeastern. Great racing here. Top 3 crews moving on to the C-level finals and the remaining to the D-level final. We're going to do a quick turnaround with these races. There are just 10 minutes between races, so we'll be back in just a minute with the lineups for the semifinal number 4. And we'll turn it back over to David and Lindsay for the race call. Okay, and going back up to the start, this is semifinal number 4, progressing to the C and D finals. In lane 1, Jacksonville. Lane 2, Rhode Island. Lane 3, Southern California. Lane 4, Rutgers. Lane 5, Duke.
And here we are taking off for the start of the Division I-8 semifinal 4. The top 3 in this race advance to the C final that will be held tomorrow. The next 3 will go to the D final. As we take off here, it's apparent immediately from the start that all of these crews want to solidify a spot in that C final, earning the highest amount of points for their team at this NCAA championship, because it is only Lane 3, Southern California, who has decided to set a little standard for speed here a little bit early by taking just a few seats. But we're only barely into the first 250 meters of this race, so there is still a lot of race course left to be rode. And as we've seen so far this weekend, crews, some have fast starts, some have slower starts and motor through the middle of the race. So keep an eye on all lanes with this semifinal 4 of the Division I-8s.
So all of these semifinals that you're watching this morning, the boats that are in the center lanes are the ones that qualified with the fastest times, or in this situation just missed out on making the A-B semifinals, which will follow this one. So this is semifinal 4 of the Division I First Eights. Right now at 400 meters, it's Southern California with half a length lead, and then it's dead level right in front of us. Rutgers in the red boat, Duke in the gray boat. They are stroke for stroke. Maybe Rutgers has a seat on Duke. But those 3 boats have pushed out from the other 2, which are Rhode Island and Jacksonville up in lanes 1 and 2. And looking at those 2 boats, they are dead level, Lindsay. So we've got lots of races within the race. If it stood at the finish line, you would still have Jacksonville and Rhode Island moving forward to a D final at the same speed. So they would race each other tomorrow knowing that they just were side by side and basically exactly the same speed. So that's something to watch as they come down the race course. It's still Southern California, maybe by 5 seats now on Rutgers with still just 1 seat on Duke.
Ever so slightly continuing to extend their lead is Southern California in that white hull boat. These 3 different colors here. We have Rutgers in the red hull sandwiched between Southern California and Duke. Duke, of course, in the quintessential Duke blue unisuits there. Rutgers, also a team that we've seen this weekend, look to gain speed down the course, kind of very methodically move little by little. And it seems that between Rutgers and Duke, they are cat and mousing it. One will take a little bit of a move, bring it up a little bit. You'll see a small pressure change, maybe a little bit of emotion out of it. And then as soon as one boat comes off of their, quote, move, the next boat does the same. So these coxswains must be having fun with this, David.
Yeah, and I'm watching the Duke coxswain, Anya Hazija, and she is just looking to her left. That's where her competitors are in this race. Being in that lane 5 on the far right side of the race course, coming down the race course, is a good position as a coxswain because you're only looking one way, and she is focused on what's going on in the Rutgers boat. And these 2 boats, as you said, are sort of pacing each other. They've kind of cut the lead that Southern California has at 1,000 meters from 5 seats to about 4, maybe 3.5 seats. And Duke, for the first time, is sort of slightly ahead of Rutgers. They're really going stroke for stroke, but Duke had about a seat there for about 100 meters, which is the first time that they had poked ahead of Rutgers. So it is and does continue to be a 3-boat race, and it's getting much closer up front.
And as we near the third 500, the middle of this third 500 of the race, it's just getting closer and closer. And this is a perfect example of a race within a race, even within the races that are happening here. As Duke and Rutgers continue to duke it out, it's allowing both of them to begin to overtake Southern California from their early lead that they took off of their start and extended through that second 500. I can only imagine the energy that these women are all feeling, building off of one another, working together as a team, knowing that 3 spots are available for that C final to be held tomorrow morning. What will they have for the last 750 meters? Will one boat sprint first? Will they all go together? It's going to come down to the finish line.
When you're sitting in that Southern California boat and you're out ahead and you start to see these boats sort of come into your peripheral more, I mean, it's got to be a little bit uncomfortable. And that's what's going on right now. And Rutgers really putting on a move here in this third 500. They've actually brought it to level now with Southern California.
Doubt. Absolutely. Planting seeds of doubt in the leaders and overtaking the leaders just before the last 500.
What a race we have going on as they approach the last 500 meters. This is semifinal 4 of the Division I First Eights, and you've got 3 boats separated by 3 seats. It's maybe now a lead for the first time for Rutgers ahead of Southern California, who is just slightly ahead of Duke. What a race. We'll pass it to you, Adrian, at the finish line.
What a race.
And absolutely taking a look at the times as they come through the 1,500 meter, just barely anything separating these top three crews. Rutgers now with the lead. They look to have overtaken Southern California for that top spot. So just poking their nose out in front and just kind of taking the boat along. Very patient. They've got a lot of run in that boat, a lot of speed as they push themselves towards the finish line. They are now extending that lead out to a 7-seat advantage over Southern California. But now look at Duke. Look at Duke here on a charge coming into these final 250 meters. Take a look at those red buoys. That's the final 250 right there. So as Duke comes through, trying to maybe take away a little bit of that lead that Rutgers had. And Lindsay and David called it. It's going to come all the way down to the wire here between these three crews. So Southern California right in the middle there in the third spot. The Scarlet Knights pushing themselves out into the lead, and then very close here between Duke and Southern California for that second or third spot. These top three crews, they're going to move on to that next level final. It will be the sea level final. Behind them, we've got Jacksonville and Rhode Island battling it out. Jacksonville with that slight advantage over Rhode Island, but coming down to the line, it will be Rutgers with their bow first across the line. And then super close here between Duke and Southern California. You heard it, almost one beep across the line. So we'll wait until we see the official results to find out who took that second spot. It looks like Duke was able to pull that off with Southern California right behind. And now finishing here will be Jacksonville and then the Rams of Rhode Island. All right, and we are just 2 minutes away from the start of semifinal number 1 for the Division I First Eights. This progresses to the A and B level finals, so either the grand final or the petite level final. The top three crews moving to the grands. The remaining will move to that B level final. The lane assignments. In lane 1, Southern Methodist University. Lane 2, California. Lane 3, Texas. Lane 4, Brown. Lane 5, Ohio State. Lane 6, Pennsylvania.
Okay, getting ready for what should be some awesome semifinals. There's going to be 2 semifinals here for spots in the A and the B finals tomorrow. top 3 are going to move through to that A final and be able to race for a national championship. As the boots come down, 6 boats across, here we go. We're going to see some tremendous racing. It's SMU, California, Texas, Brown, Ohio State, Pennsylvania. Everybody looks like with a clean start, so we'll see who wants to take the early lead. We'll see what the various plans are from these 8s. Again, you got to be top 3 if you want to go for that national championship. You got Texas in lane 3, 55-0. They have not been beaten in 2 years in this boat class. If you add in the 4 boats they beat in the heat yesterday, and they have gone to the lead.
Texas being one of 2 schools, one of 2 teams here that swept their heats, winning all 3 of their heats in the Division I 8, in the Division I first 8, second 8, and varsity 4. Stanford being the other crew who you'll see in this next semifinal. But Texas is that team that yesterday they got up to the line a little bit slowly, but then as they lengthened out, just motored down the race course. And here we are, not even about 300, 400 meters in, and they have already lengthened to a base rate, if not a sub-base rate. It is Brown right next to them in lane 4, who decided to get off the line with them, go a little bit quicker, a little bit higher. Not a surprise out of that Brown crew, because they are known for rowing at a slightly higher stroke rate, and that's exactly what you would do at the start of the race. The question is, where is their sweet spot rhythm, and what will they do as the race unfolds? Who in the outside lanes, being Ohio State, Pennsylvania, Southern Methodist, SMU, and California, in those outside lanes, will their secondary races push into the current leaders of Texas and Brown?
Texas 38, Brown 40. As they come through 500 meters, that is, to my eye, a very good-looking 38.
Agreed.
I would not have guessed until I looked at my stroke coach that Texas is at 38. They have 3/4 of a length advantage over Brown. Brown still sitting in second place. Here comes California in lane 2. California with a slight advantage for third place over Ohio State in lane 5. Those are your top 4. Again, you've got to be top 3 to go for a national title in the Division I first 8s. As we come through 750, it's Texas looking very composed out in front, and we'll see. It looks like the bow ball of Brown is on the stroke woman's hands, Kate Nifton of the Texas boat. Texas is going to try to break the overlap here pretty soon. I'm looking at the coxswain, Lindsay, and she's not even looking around Rachel Rain. She is just in there. She is calling the race plan, and she doesn't even have to look out.
And what we're seeing right now is almost a perfect chevron on the race course. What I mean is that the crews that are anticipated to be faster are in lanes 3 and 4, and then you come down lanes 2 and 5 would be the next, and then the outside lanes from there, creating almost a perfect pyramid down the course, and that is exactly what we're seeing in terms of racing. And as we're talking about Texas lengthening their lead, California, even though Texas has some open water on them, a little bit, maybe 1/4 of a boat length of open water, that coxswain is certainly looking right to look at lane 5 over here with Ohio State to help push them forward, which might push them back up on Texas, but certainly would push them into Brown, who's in lane 4 in those pink hats. So as these secondary races, I can imagine that the coxswain is using other boats, if they're a little bit trailing right now, to use them as stepping stones to kind of slingshot them forward, one boat at a time.
It's the Longhorns with clear water now over Brown. Brown with about 3/4 of a length over, still staying strong, trying to charge every once in a while California in lane 2. California just slightly ahead of Ohio State. Those 2 boats very close to one another, though. That is really the battle that's going on. Will those 2 boats start to track down Brown as Texas starts to row away with it? At 12:50, it is almost a half a length of open water now for Texas ahead of Brown. Here comes Cal. I'm watching their bow, and it's starting to really poke into that second place of Brown. That Cal boat stroked by Angela Zabo. She knows this race course. She's from Sarasota, Florida. And we have a race on our hands here, Adrian. 3 boats for 2 spots in the A final. It's still Brown in second place, but they are starting to really get pressed by both California and Ohio State. Pennsylvania in 5th, SMU in 6th.
It's something that you can see here, even though, as David mentioned, that the stroke rate out of Texas is quite high at that 38. You can still see where they're having the patience to drive the boat forward with their legs, but also relax the hands in front of the body. You can see them breathing with their hands. That allows the boat to do some work for them. You can see their coxswain take a quick peek, getting ready to rev them up for the last 500 of this race. Will they wind it up to practice their sprint that they will need tomorrow, potentially for that grand final?
Here we go. It's California hanging on to third place by a couple of seats over Ohio State. Both of those boats are connected with second place Brown. Texas way out in front. We'll give it to you, Adrian.
That's right. Relaxation is what it's all about. Coming into this championship, the Texas crew undefeated throughout this season. This eight has not lost a race in 2 years, and you can see the amount of confidence that they have coming into the semifinal, rowing down the course at 38 strokes a minute, but looking like it's just a steady state row. I mean, these ladies are warriors. As Lindsay had said, they swept the heats yesterday. So again, a lot of confidence coming in to this semifinal, but of course, not taking anything for granted. They're still gonna race it out. Coming into the final 250 meters, they're gonna wind it up for a little bit of a sprint, not necessarily needing to, but now it's gonna come down to Brown and California. California sitting behind Brown just by a half a second, but now here comes Ohio State. Ohio State, the Buckeyes, looking to see if they can get into one of those top 3 spots. Only 3 crews will move on to that grand final. Right now, it is looking like the Longhorns, watching that lead shrink just a little bit as Cal, Brown, and Ohio State push each other all the way to the line. It will be the Longhorns across the line first, but look at this finish. California, Brown, Ohio State. It is going to be tight here. Can Ohio State do it and get into that grand final? I think they were just shy of making it. And now here comes Southern Methodist, Pennsylvania, and then Southern Methodist. So Pennsylvania with a nice showing here in this semifinal. What a race. It is California that will hold on to that 3rd spot by less than half a second over Ohio State. So Texas, Brown, California, unofficially the 3 crews that will move into the grand final. Ohio State, Pennsylvania, Southern Methodist, moving to the petite level final. And as this little storm cell moves through us, we go right back to the start where it's sunny. So this is semifinal number 2, same progression. We've got 6 boats on the course. 3 boats will advance to the upper level final, the remainder moving on to the petite level final. In lane 1, Virginia. Lane 2, Washington. Lane 3, Stanford. Lane 4, Princeton. Lane 5, Yale. Lane 6, Michigan. David and Lindsay, will turn it over to you for the start of this race.
Here at the start of the Division I eights semifinal 2, this race will decide the other 3 crews that will advance to tomorrow's grand final to find out who will clinch this year's national championship in the Division I eights. The 4 crews in the center lanes, Washington, Stanford, Princeton, and Yale, are the 4 that came through the heats to get here. Virginia and Michigan in lanes 1 and lane 6, respectively, are the 2 crews that raced through the repechage yesterday afternoon to find their spots here. And it is Stanford in lane 3 is the other of those crews, as I mentioned previously with Texas, that swept their heats, taking first place in all of their heats. So here with this racing, with Washington on one side of Stanford, Princeton on the other, Yale as well, all of these boats are looking to clinch one of the top 3 spots to make it through to that A final. It is right now Princeton in lane 4, who we saw a quick start out of them yesterday, didn't we, David?
We did. It's also Washington. I would be embellishing if I didn't tell you that I've got a fair amount of adrenaline pumping. This is a hot start. All of these boats are in the mix. It's Washington and Princeton that have their nose out in front. It's Stanford right in between them. It's Yale on the left side of the rowers in the Princeton boat. All 4 of those boats have gone, and they're all separated by maybe 3 total seats as we come through almost the 400-meter mark of our 2,000-meter race course here at Nathan Betterson Park. Everybody is still connected as well. Even Michigan right in front of us. The bow ball of Michigan is right on the 2 women in the Yale boat, and they're connected with everybody, including Princeton and Washington. Only boat even slightly off the pace is Virginia. We saw those boats from Virginia really pick up pace sort of in the second half yesterday, so we'll see if they can get back into the mix later. At 500 meters, it's Princeton, maybe a seat over Washington.
And Princeton does come into this entire regatta at ranked number 2 in their varsity 8, which this is the race that we're watching right now, the varsity 8 semifinal 2. So to see them set a tone early here is not surprising. Now, with Washington out there in lane 2 also looking to go with them, they had a little bit of a slower start earlier in the season, and we've only seen them pick up speed as this regatta, just in time for this NCAA championship regatta. So let's look for them to continue to gain speed over the weekend as well, as they look to challenge our current leaders, Princeton, in lane 4.
Here comes Stanford. I'm watching the bow ball from Stanford. They're starting to get very close to even at 750 with Washington, but it continues to be Princeton, Washington, and now Stanford is showing their speed in that white shell in between the 2 gold that I just talked about, and it's Yale that is the only boat that is still connected with those 3. So Yale's still in the mix here for a spot in the grand final. They're going to have to really figure out this middle part of the race. They're going to have to find a little bit more speed, or they might start to lose touch as Princeton now starts to make a move. Princeton now has taken a couple of seats. They made a distinct power move there, and the Princeton coxswain is really locked in. So it is Princeton as they come through 900 meters with the lead, and it's almost dead level now, Stanford and Washington.
It's interesting to see the different strategies as these boats come down the race course. For those of you out there, usually boats teams have race plans where they might take a move at different points on the race course. Some might just have one move. Some teams might have multiple. Some might give the coxswain a little bit of instruction. That would be the coach and the coxswain having that conversation of maybe don't use this move at this location, or have an extra one in your back pocket just in case you need it. What that means is a lot of times a move will happen right around the 1,000-meter mark, and it looks like Princeton decided to go a little bit before the 1,000. And as we move into this third 500, look for each crew to kind of solidify their location in one of those top 3 spots by potentially taking an extra move, by potentially sprinting a little bit early as we near the last 500 of this race. And through just after the 1,000, it is Stanford that has continued to eke back up into that lead that Princeton has had. And that margin that Princeton took right from the get-go, right from the start of this race, is very quickly being taken down stroke by stroke as Washington and Stanford battle it out.
Yeah, Stanford is at 35-36, Princeton at 38. And it's starting to come into play now, it appears, because now you've got Stanford dead level for the first time with Princeton up front, just ahead of Washington. These 3 boats are open water clear of 4th place Yale. 5th place is Michigan. 6th place is Virginia. 1,400 meters, and I think Stanford has taken the lead for the first time in this race. They stayed patient, and now they have a seat on Princeton, and Princeton has 2 seats on Washington. This is a race. 3 boats And it's 3 seats amongst these boats as they come through 500 to go. It is a slight lead now for Stanford. Will that stroke rating come into play? Princeton is right there. Washington is right there. It's going to come down to the tape between those 3.
Watching the progression of this event has been absolutely, it's just giving me goosebumps, because at the 1,000, there was less than a second separating out Princeton, Washington, and Stanford. But patience, we saw that in the previous race. It was Texas being patient all the way through that semifinal, and now we're seeing very similar racing from Stanford. Stanford may be rowing at a slightly lower stroke rate, Princeton a little bit more elevated. That stroke seat, Lucy Coven, she's got rowing in her blood. She is pulling that boat down the course almost herself. You can see the aggression that she is setting the tone for that Princeton boat. So it's going to come all the way down to the wire here. But Stanford looking very, very relaxed, very patient. And again, we talk a lot about confidence here at this national championship. Being flanked by both Princeton and Washington, Stanford really just has to stay strong. Take a look up. You can see their upright movements as they push into their sprint sequence, staying just ahead of Princeton and Washington. A little bit too close for me to call between those two crews on the outside of Stanford. As we come down to the line, I believe that Washington will have taken that second place position just slightly over Princeton. As we come down to the wire here, it will be the Cardinal with a 4-seat advantage at the finish line. Washington now 4 seats over Princeton to take those top 3 spots into the grand final. And now here comes Yale, back by a little bit of open water. They have open water over both Michigan and Virginia. Virginia with a great sprint here in these final strokes. Very close between Michigan and Virginia for that 5th or 6th place position. So unofficially, it will be Stanford, Washington, and Princeton in that order, moving on to the grand finals, followed by Yale, Michigan, and Virginia moving on to the petites. All right, next up, we have the second 8s for the Division I teams. These next 2 lane 5, Oregon State.
Okay, the next race is going to be semifinal 3 of the Division I second 8s as the boots come down. It's 5 boats across. Same progression. You want to be top 3. Top 3 will get you into the C final. These Division I teams coming and competing for team titles. They bring 3 boats each team, a first 8, a second 8, and a 4. These are the second 8s for these respective teams, and a really good close start. This is semifinals day is super fun because everybody has sort of made their way here through sometimes 2 races or 1 race, and they're all sort of similar speeds, and that's what we've seen off the start. Everybody's still bunched up. It does look like the red boat of Rutgers is trying to move out. They've got about a deck on the rest of the field. Everybody else is dead level at this point as they come through 250.
As you mentioned, David, everyone's raced at least once. All of these teams have raced twice, having gone through the reps yesterday. Rutgers placed 3rd in their rep. Southern California placed 4th in their rep, and Oregon State placed 5th in their respective rep. But that means that all of these crews have had practice on the course. They've had multiple practices here, multiple warm-ups here, and a couple of times down the course to work out some kinks. So the question is, have they been able to pick 1 or 2 things to adjust each time they're out so that they just continue to increase the quality over the course of the weekend? It's incredible to see that we have 22 full Division I programs here, and the quality of rowing that we're seeing across the board has just been elevated year after year after year. There are 10 schools here that have all 3 of their boats in the AB semifinals, which just speaks to the depth of the field.
As they come through 500, it is a lead for Rutgers. It's half a length. I'm going to give second place at the moment to the Beavers, Oregon State in lane 5. They've got about a deck on lane 4, which is Southern California. And then there is basically a dead level race going on in lanes 1 and 2, Rhode Island and Gonzaga in those adjacent lanes. And both of those boats are still connected with both Southern California and Oregon State. So it's starting to space out the field just a little bit, but it is still connected enough. You could see Gonzaga or Rhode Island finding some speed in this middle section of the race and starting to get back into the mix. But you got to be top 3 to get into that C-level final to contest places 13 through 18 in the nation in the NCAA Division Division I second 8s as they come through 750. It's still Rutgers, and they can kind of continue to just move away a couple inches of stroke.
They sure do, and that's the type of row that really builds your confidence in what you're doing. Rather than a move giving you a seat or 2, being able to just see that what you're doing is just ever so slightly faster than what the rest of the crews on the field are doing per stroke. So then you go, okay, I just need to keep what I'm doing here. The coxswain might even be saying that to you. This is what I need right now, and in 2, you're going to give me more legs and get a little more speed out of it. In that cockpit where the coxswain is, she knows exactly what stroke rate her crew is at. She knows exactly how fast her crew is going per 500 meters. They know how quickly they are covering the water, so she can give that instant within boat feedback. So you as a rower, you're not only hearing potentially what she's asking of you, but you're looking at the women in front and behind you pushing off of their energy, but then to also be told that what you're doing is making your boat go faster, possibly faster than you have gone all season, that is motivation.
As they come through 1,000 meters, it is 3/4 of a length advantage now for Rutgers over Oregon State. Oregon State now has extended their lead on Southern California to almost 3/4 of a boat length as well. Oregon State did beat Southern California at Pac-12s in this boat class. So we'll see if Southern California is going to sort of avenge that situation and try to get back into Oregon State in this third 500 meters. But I'm watching this Rutgers boat, and it really is working. They are at a relatively high stroke rating, but they're letting the boat really glide, and it's working. I'm watching the coxswain, and she's right on the bow ball of Oregon State. She every once in a while looks over to her right to see that bow ball. She's going to want to get clear water. It's a huge advantage to have clear water. It is very difficult for any team to get tracked down once they have water clear on the second place crew. As soon as I say that, we're starting to see the Beavers move up.
And you can see the similar rowing styles in lane 3 in the Red Hull and Rutgers, and in lane 5 with Oregon State. However, what Rutgers is doing differently is they are just, you can see the emotion in their feet. They are just driving like crazy. They want to take this race. They want to have the best lane position. So even though 3 go through, and these 3 lead crews do have solid margins on the other crews that are in this race, they will potentially move on to that C final. But the better you place within your semifinal, you get a different lane assignment. And so if you place higher, you will be put in a lane, potentially lanes 3 and 4, in your next race that will allow you to be next to the crews that are potentially the fastest, which will help you as the races as the progression of races continues.
All right, Adrian, we're going to pass it to you. It really has spaced out. You do have a clear top three. It's Rutgers ahead of Oregon State and Southern California, and then it is Gonzaga ahead of Rhode Island.
And this whole championship has just been so amazing to watch. As Lindsay had said, such a deep field as we were watching yesterday. The heats were incredibly tight. The reps were brutal. And now these semifinals, just amazing and great racing here. This is probably the most spread out semifinal that we're going to see, as Rutgers has really led from wire to wire. I have them clocked at 36 strokes a minute. Just behind them, it will be Oregon State next to Southern California. So Oregon State and Southern California, Pac-12 rivals, and as David had said, Oregon State looking to reverse the results from that Pac-12 here. So these three teams well out in front. There's about 3 seconds separating them. So Rutgers about 3 seconds over Oregon State 3 seconds over Southern California as we come to the line. And then finally, it will be Gonzaga just ahead of the Rams of Rhode Island. So again, these three crews, as they come to the finish line, will move on to that C-level final. Rutgers, what I would really call a bubble crew. They have really come up nationally in terms of their competitiveness, and just great to see them here moving in to that next level final. They have pulled clear of Oregon State with a little bit of open water at that finish line. Here come the Beavers for this second place position, half a boat length of open water ahead of the Trojans. The women of Troy moving into that third spot. The Bulldogs of Gonzaga in fourth, followed by Rhode Island. And turning our attention back up to the start, this is semifinal number 4 for the Division I second eights. In lane 1, Jacksonville. Lane 2, Northeastern. Lane 3, Duke. Lane 4, Syracuse. And lane 5, Boston University.
Boots are up, and we are sitting ready at the start of the Division I second eights semifinal 4. This is the second of those 2 races that will decide the other 3 crews who will go to the C final and the D final set to run tomorrow morning. It is Jacksonville in lane 1 on the far side of the course, then Northeastern, Duke, Syracuse, and Boston University as they run left to right as the referee or coxswain would read them. It is Duke, Syracuse, and BU who have placed the highest, coming through their reps that were run yesterday afternoon. So the question is, among these 5 crews, which 3 want to advance to that C final to vie for places 13 to 18 in the country? And as we take it off, it is lane 5, Boston University, who says that they want to get out in front early and set the tone right away.
Yeah, quick start, 44 strokes a minute for BU. Going right with them is Syracuse in the adjacent lane 4. Beautiful flat water here at Nathan Betterson Park. Some of the best conditions that you're going to find on this World Championship race course that we have here. And it's starting to get in the mix here is that boat from Duke as well. So these 3 boats already at 250 have moved at least a half a length away from both Northeastern and Jacksonville in lanes 1 and 2. And new leader, after it was early BU, is now Syracuse in lane 4. And Lindsay, they're sitting there in lane 4, and they're being flanked by the 2 other speedy boats so far early on in this semifinal. So they're feeling it, and they kind of get it both sides peripherally. And, what does that sort of feel like when you're getting pressured from both sides?
Well, especially since both Duke and Syracuse come out of the ACC, they've raced one another multiple times throughout this season already, and they've traded races. And so to be able to go back and forth against a crew that you've seen before, you might have a little bit different confidence or a vendetta out for the other crew. But to have crews on both sides, that is just even more of a reason for you to stay internal as a rower. Because if you let any iota of distraction occur because of what's happening on the lanes on either side of you, then that takes away energy and focus that will otherwise allow you to go fast. And now, as we were talking about that, Northeastern pushed up a little bit, and maybe that is what has caused Duke to put a little pressure on Syracuse, as Duke looks to pull forward ever so slightly per stroke, potentially putting their bow ball in front before we reach 750 meters into this race.
Yeah, it's a new leader, it's Duke, but as soon as I say that, here comes Syracuse back. So this is going to be a grudge match. You're talking about 2 ACC teams, Lindsay. They know each other. They obviously have chosen their respective schools in the same conference, and they want to beat each other. Let's be very clear about it. And any race you line up here at the NCAA championships, you want to win the race. It doesn't matter if it's a D final, it doesn't matter if it's semifinal 4. They want to win it. So Duke now has a deck on Syracuse. So the first time that Duke has had much of a lead here.
And Syracuse answers.
And Syracuse, pushing right back. So it does appear that they're just going to go back and forth. They're going to use their energy on each other. They both have moved away quite a bit from BU, but Boston University is still sitting even open water ahead of Northeastern. Northeastern is about 3/4 of a length ahead of Jacksonville University. And as we hit the 900-meter mark, it is the bow ball of Syracuse on the 3 women's hands in the Duke boat. So that is a lead for Duke over Syracuse. Syracuse now trying to break the overlap on Boston University.
Boy, David, it sure is just picture-perfect conditions as we cross the 1,000 here. As you steamroll down this course, glide down this course through this almost mirror-like water that we're having, I can only imagine how much boat run these crews are feeling under their feet right now. Conditions like this, it's just you. This is just ideal for what you want. Now, with only top 3 to go through to that C final, it is still in lane 5, Boston University here. But they know that Northeastern over there in lane 2, also out of Boston, potentially they've seen each other throughout the year. I imagine that Coxon is keeping an eye on them, even though we are past halfway here in this race. You want to make sure that you're solidifying those 3 spots. So prior experience in the season, we've talked about that with Duke and Syracuse. Do BU and Northeastern have prior experience that's giving them the confidence they need to be one of those top 3 crews as we get into the last 750 of this race?
We are into the last 750 with your leader, Duke. Duke Coxon really trying to break the overlap now on Syracuse. Duke has some momentum. They are continuing to move away from Syracuse. It's the Duke Coxon right on the bow ball of Syracuse. Syracuse has broken the overlap on Boston University. It's a couple seats of open water from Syracuse back to 3rd place Boston University. And it's about a full length of open water, or maybe even slightly more, from Boston University back to 4th place Northeastern. So Northeastern is going to really have to try to find something to get into the top 3. As we look back up front, still trying to break the overlap, can't quite do it, is Duke.
And as they come into the last 500 meters, Duke has stayed patient here. They haven't really raised their rate yet. Syracuse looked like they took it up a little bit early, maybe took a move early to try and gain back a little bit of a lead, because again, they're going for a race for lanes at this point, put themselves in ideal positions for that C final. Duke may have another gear that might allow them to push out ever so slightly more on Syracuse. Let's see how it unfolds from here, Adrian.
All right, and those ACC rivals out in front, Duke and Syracuse battling each other all the way down the race course. Boston had a little bit more contact with them earlier on in the race, but they have faded back to third with open water behind Syracuse. But as we come to the line, it will be the Blue Devils of Duke pushing their nose out in front by 1 full boat length now over Syracuse. Back to them. The Terriers of Boston University in that third place position, pretty confident that they're going to be moving on to that next level final as Northeastern and Jacksonville trail just slightly. So Northeastern with the advantage over Jacksonville. Boston and Northeastern definitely facing each other at some point during the spring season. And then again up front, Duke and Syracuse having raced each other several times, most recently at the ACC championships. So as we come to the line here, it will be Duke with a significant lead now, bow to stern over Syracuse. Stroke rates coming up a little bit higher here in that Syracuse boat to push out that good sprint and maybe race for a little bit better lane in the C final. Behind them by a length and a half of open water, Boston continuing in third. Duke coming to the line now. And now here is Syracuse. Boston University good for third. And then here comes Northeastern and Jacksonville. All right, and here we go. This is semifinal number 1 to contest for the grand final or the petite level final for the Division I second eights. In lane 1, Brown. Lane 2, California. Lane 3, Washington. Lane 4, Texas. Lane 5, Princeton. Lane 6, Pennsylvania.
All right, we are looking at 6 boats across at semifinal 1 of the Division I second eights. So much firepower. This should be another tremendous race. and we'll see who wants to get out to the lead early. Tremendously flat conditions here at Nathan Benderson Park, and the sun has just peeked out from behind the clouds. It is perfection. 6 boats across. If you ever come to a start, you are going to hear a ton of commotion. You hear coxswains yelling. The boats themselves with the equipment make a lot of noise. And we've got Texas, Washington trying to go out to the lead. Also Princeton, everybody going for it here early in this second 8 semifinal.
As everyone takes off, the rates are much higher than they will be through the body of the race, and that just makes it even more emotion laid out on those first strokes of the race. But it's just gorgeous, flat, calm, and then that calm is broken by the desire to not just be in the grand final vying for the national championship, but the desire to have the best lanes going into the national championship races that will happen tomorrow. And it is coming off of their length in Washington in lane 3 to go with that starting sequence, their high strokes, and then to lengthen out, bringing their rate long and low and efficient early. They actually took a few seats on their lengthen, which is truly impressive. That is efficiency right there. And I can tell you right now that the lengthen stroke, that first stroke that your coxswain calls off of those high strokes, is the money stroke of the race. It is so much fun. And when you hit it, it gives you chills, you smile, and you can't wait to push as hard as you have in your entire life to potentially lay down the best race that you've had, not just all season, all year, in your whole career, and look to build speed from there. And it is Washington that is looking to extend their lead through their efficient rhythm that they set right off the start.
Lindsay, just like happened with the Texas first 8, I had to look at my stroke coach for 20 seconds to realize that Washington is rowing at 38 because it does not look like 38. They have a half a length advantage over Texas. Texas with about a seat over Princeton. Those are your top 3 at the moment. And then it's very close between the remaining 3 boats. It's really too close to call. Maybe it's Penn slightly ahead of really deadlocked Brown and California. But it is the defending national champions in this second 8, Washington. And they got the early lead. And are they going to be able to hold off Texas? Texas is starting to move away from Princeton just a little bit at 750, but it remains a half a length advantage for Washington ahead of Texas. Texas now with a full deck, so maybe about 15 feet over Princeton. As I'm watching the 2 boats in lanes 1 and 2, Brown and California pace each other, and they do appear that they're showing some speed to try to get back in the mix.
And as Brown and Cal over there on the opposite side of the course in lane 1, Brown with a few pink hats, California, of course, in the yellow unisuit tops in lane 2, as they battle it out, that might bring them up into also West Coast contenders Washington, which will then make it a race with lanes 4 and 5, Texas and Princeton as well. So knowing that 3 spots are on the line for that A final, to make it to the A final, that distinguishes places 1 through 6. Whomever doesn't come in top 3 will go into the B final, which places 7 through 12. And so with all of these crews battling the way that they are, everyone at this point, as we enter in just the second half of this race, that critical third 500, it's anyone's game to come in top 3 right now, as again, California and Brown battle it out on the far side of the course to put pressure eventually, potentially, on Princeton here in lane 5.
Here comes Texas. Texas slowly and methodically cutting the lead of Washington as we come through 1,100, almost 1,150 meters in this 2,000-meter race course, and it's getting a little bit precarious up front for Washington. They had a full half length about 300 meters ago. It is now only about a quarter of a length lead over Texas. Texas moving away from Princeton, and those 2 boats that we have been talking about, Brown and California, starting to move into Princeton just a little bit. As they come through 1,300 meters, it's just a deck now for Washington. And I'm looking straight at the bow ball of Texas, and every single time that bow ball moves, it's taking an inch on Washington.
And it seems that they're taking Princeton right along with them, and that's exactly what Princeton needs as Brown continues to inch ever so slightly as well. But this is a race that will help those 2 crews that are currently in the lead in lanes 3 and 4, Washington and Texas, going into tomorrow's final, barring any major changes at this point. They'll have practice racing a race with a ton of pressure on them. Again, to speak of the depth of the field, just to be in the AB semi is a humongous deal. Look at how close all 6 of these crews are, knowing that these are 6 of the top 12 crews in the country, and someone's not going to make it through.
We're going to give it to you, Adrian. 500 meters left. Your leader is Washington. It is very, very close. I don't believe Texas has lost in this boat class all season long. We'll see what happens in those last 400 meters. It's Texas and Washington out in front of Princeton.
And that's right. The Huskies looking to maybe be the spoiler here over the Longhorns. Texas has been perfect all year. They swept their heats yesterday, but let's not forget the Huskies are the defending champion in this event, including last year. All of the athletes in their boat with national championship experience, either in that 2V, the V8, or the V4. Their coxswain coming over from the men's team from last year, so guiding her boat down the course. But now here comes Texas. They just switched into a different gear as they hit those red buoys. Now moving up with a 3-seat advantage over Washington. Princeton still there in the mix. So as we come down to the line, Princeton winding it up, seeing if they can move just a little bit closer to Texas. The Huskies also known for that great sprint, but I think that the Longhorns are going to have it as they continue to push their bow forward towards that finish line. Take a look at Brown and California. Also Pennsylvania there in that 6th place position. Brown with the upper hand over the Golden Bears. But as we come down to the line, will it be the Huskies? Will it be the Longhorns? It will be Texas. 3 seats now at the finish line. Washington in 2nd. Princeton now in 3rd. Brown good for 4th. Here's Cal and now Pennsylvania. And just a quick announcement, please, if you would listen up. We are going to clear the course as there is lightning in the area. So spectators down on the beach, please take shelter, return to your cars if possible, or inside a building. So please clear the spectator area. We are taking boats off of the course. They will be returning to their docking positions, and then we will be back hopefully at 10:50. We will give you updates right now. 10:50 will be the start for the next race. So again, please clear the course, take shelter, preferably in your cars or under the overhang of the building. We will look for our start time at 10:50. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the 2022 NCAA Women's Rowing Championships. After a slight weather delay, we've got the crews back in the starting docks. We will have David and Lindsay start the racing out here in just a couple of minutes. While we are waiting, I just wanted to call attention to the fact that this is the 25th anniversary of NCAA Women's Rowing at this championship. This is such a special event, as this is also the 50th anniversary of Title IX, and two of our referees were actually instrumental in bringing the championship to an NCAA level. Chris Lang and Barb Groot were two of the beginning referees that started this event, so hats off to them. In this event, this is the Division I Second 8 semifinal. Number 2, the top 3 boats advance to the grand final. In Lane 1, Michigan. Lane 2, Virginia. Lane 3, Yale. Lane 4, Stanford. Lane 5, Southern Methodist University. And Lane 6, Ohio State.
And we're off here in the Division I Second 8 semifinal 2. Due to a slight crosswind, we have readjusted the lanes. All crews are rowing with their same assigned bow cards, but as the referee would read left to right, so over on the far side we have Yale next to Stanford, then Virginia, then SMU, then Michigan, then Ohio State here on the inside. These crews have taken it in stride, though, as they've gotten set up in their lanes and taken off cleanly from this start. Never you mind the small delay that they just had. It just provided them an opportunity to go breathe out a few nerves and have another little bit of a warm-up before getting up here to figure out which 3 crews will move forward to advance to tomorrow's A final and then vie for a national championship, an opportunity to earn their respective schools the most possible points. And as we've taken off, you'll notice that although it says bow cards 3 and 4 over on the far side of the course in lanes 1 and 2, it is Yale and Stanford who are setting the early pace.
It is. It's Yale by a deck over Stanford. Stanford with 3/4 of a length over third place Virginia. Virginia with a deck over SMU. And then it's basically dead level to my eye, Ohio State. So it is going to be left to right. If you were looking down the race course, is how these boats are going to be put into the lanes this afternoon. It's just because there's a slight crosswind, which does then slightly favor the lanes on the left side of the race course. And so if you qualified better, you get a slightly better lane. Realistically, in my mind, as I look at the water, pretty fair. Looks very flat. It is a very, very slight crosswind. Up front now, as we approach 700 meters, it is dead level between the boats from Yale and the boat from Stanford, and it's Virginia still sitting in third.
And as Virginia in that next lane over in lane 4, they have the closest contact with the two lead crews of Yale and Stanford right now, as Stanford looks to take a slight lead over Yale, crossing in through past this first 750 meters of the race. It is taking Virginia along with them little by little. And of course, Virginia off to their next lane inside in lane 5 is SMU in that red boat that would then push them up into the leaders. This is going to be 6 boats vying for 3 spots, but right now it is still Yale and Stanford who are looking to separate themselves out, make a statement, build some confidence, and get another clean race under their belts before seeing who gets to move forward.
Yeah, it's Stanford and Yale trading punches up front. It's Stanford right now with a deck over Yale as we approach the halfway point. This is semifinal 2 of the Division I second eights, our final semifinal of this boat class. Top 3 are going to move through to the A final tomorrow. Bottom 3 will go to the B final to contest places 7 through 12 in the nation here at our 2022 NCAA championships. Virginia sitting in 3rd place, trying to break the overlap on SMU and Ohio State, who are basically dead level, just about a half a length ahead of Michigan. So those 3 boats are all connected, and they're going to try their speed relative to one another for a favorable lane if things stay sort of steady. But it's open water for these 2 that are out in front. It's Stanford. They've got a little bit more than a deck now over Yale. Yale open water back to Virginia.
And as we move into the closing 750 meters of this race, it does look as though these crews, everyone seems to be taking some sort of move at this point. They want to create an even more solid rhythm. Can you, yes, you can't do anything to the team next to you except plant a seed of doubt in their mind. So can you take another inch by what you're doing from an efficiency standpoint? What might the coxswains be saying to them at this point in time? What might these women be saying inside their heads to themselves at this point in time? They know what's on the line here. You must be top 3 here to have an opportunity for the national title that will be contested tomorrow. Places 1 through 6 will come out of the A final. Places 7 through 12 will go into the B final. So again, the top 3 here looking to solidify those spots and then also solidify the better lanes come tomorrow.
Stanford 37 strokes a minute, approaching the last 500 meters. They have about 4 seats on Yale. Yale with a couple seats of open water back to very clear 3rd place Virginia. Virginia open water back to 4th place Ohio State. Ohio State now with almost a half a length on SMU coming through 500 to go. SMU with half a length on Michigan. That's your field as they come toward you, Adrian. But out in front it's Stanford, the defending silver medalist in the boat class.
And thank you, David and Lindsay, and apologies on not knowing those lane assignment shifts. That certainly is something that these 8s have had to contend with the weather delay, with a lane shift. It's all about mindset right now. And coming into the final 300 meters here, Stanford, again, with that warrior mindset. They are perfect coming in to this race in terms of their progression through the heats and now into the semifinals. Yale at the halfway point was less than a second behind Stanford, but now that gap seems to be widening just a little bit. And these 2 crews, Stanford and Yale, pushing each other so hard that they now have even more water between themselves and Virginia. So very clear here who your top 3 crews are. The Bulldogs of Yale just behind the Cardinal of Stanford as they wind it up coming into their final strokes. Stanford looking very, very solid and calm, but again, executing a race plan so that the next time they get out on the water, it is perfection. Stanford coming in for their final strokes here, followed by Yale. Open water back to them. It will be the Cavaliers of Virginia making their way into that grand final. Behind them, Ohio State for 4th place, holding off the Mustangs of SMU, and then finally, Michigan.
Here we go with semifinal 3 of the Division I fours. So we have shifted now from the 8s to the 4s. You're going to see 4 semifinals at the Division I level, and they're going to work the same way if you've been watching all day. Top 3 in this situation are going to go through to the C final. Bottom 2 will go to the D final in the Division I fours category. And again, if you're watching at home and it hasn't been updated online, the setup from left to right, if you're watching a picture from behind these crews, it's Syracuse, Oregon State, Rhode Island, Gonzaga, and Boston University is closest to me here in the commentary car, and will be closest to the beach in the finish line tower coming down. So those are your 5 crews. Again, 3 spots available, and it is the 2 top qualifiers for this semifinal 3 that have pushed themselves out to about a half a length advantage on the others at 300 meters at Syracuse and Oregon State.
They're going stroke for stroke, both of those boats with the orange blades over there on the far side. Syracuse in the blue hull, Oregon State in the white hull. They have lengthened out to about a half a length lead as they are looking to lengthen off of their start sequence and get into the meat of this race. And they are absolutely stroke for stroke, with Oregon State's bow ball just gradually creeping into Syracuse's lead. That crew certainly looking to put themselves in a good position to snag a solid lane for the C final that will be held tomorrow, earning their team the most possible points in this particular boat class. After that delay, these women have not allowed that delay to get into their heads. It looks as though they are getting right onto their pace and just lengthening out their position from the get-go as we cross into the second 500 meters.
Through 500 meters, it's now about a half a length advantage for Syracuse ahead of Oregon State, and the Zags coming into the picture. They have taken over 3rd place from Rhode Island. One of the things when I'm looking at the schedule that I absolutely love to see, and you're only going to see at something like the NCAA championships, we've got a boat here, Lindsay, from New York. We've got one from Oregon, Rhode Island, Washington State, and Massachusetts. And so the entire country is represented in this 5-boat field here in semifinal 3 of the Division I fours, as Syracuse starts to sort of extend that lead just a little bit every time they drop in over Oregon State. Oregon State with almost a full length over Gonzaga. Gonzaga, with that big move right at the 500-meter point, has half a length on Rhode Island.
And as Syracuse does lengthen out here, you're looking for efficiency right away, especially in the 4s, because it is a longer time that it takes these 4s to travel. They don't move quite as quickly as those 8s do. So the efficiency is really key here. So to stay dialed in, make sure that you're following exactly, make sure that you're breathing exactly. You know, being down here in South Florida, it's nice and warm today. The sun is out, and so that's going to try you as well. So making sure that you are really just being as efficient as possible, breathing early on in the race so that you can stay nice and calm, relatively speaking, so that you'll have another gear to give if necessary as the race unfolds, as we move into the second half, about to cross over the 1,000-meter mark.
950 meters gone for your leader, Syracuse. The Orange are out in front. 3 seats of open water back to second place, Oregon State. Oregon State is starting to get pressed now by Gonzaga. Gonzaga is moving, and as soon as I say that, Oregon State kind of countered the move just a little bit. As they come through the halfway point, it is a full-length second place for Oregon State over Gonzaga. And it looks like maybe a little bit of either a power or a rate shift for Rhode Island. They're trying to get back into the mix. At Coxon looking left at Oregon State, looking right at Gonzaga, and saying, look, women, we are half a length down for a place in the C finals, and they're starting to move.
Yeah, I was about to say, with Gonzaga there, Rhode Island has not let them go. They've stayed in contact, and that's exactly, you know, as a crew, as a coxswain, that's what I would want to have happen, where, okay, in the middle of the race, we haven't necessarily advanced, but can we stay in contact so then as we start to smell the finish line, horses to the barn, can we overtake the crew that just hasn't been able to shake us this whole time? They got us a little bit on the start, but can we maintain and then maybe shift one more time, take another gear as you move into this third 500, move through the middle of this third 500, and kind of, again, get into their minds a little bit and say, hey, we're still here, pay attention to us, because it is 3 to advance to that C final, and there are certainly 4 boats that are vying for those 3 spots.
So I'm looking at the Gonzaga coxswain, wondering if she's really looking over to see that threat coming from Rhode Island. She's not. she really would kind of have to totally turn her head, though. So she's probably in communication with the bow woman in that Gonzaga boat, and they just maintain this lead. So they are not changing their rowing. They are not getting anxious about the fact that Rhode Island is right there, sort of in their blind spot. But out front, it continues to be Syracuse, and as we approach 500 meters to go, it's going to be a length of open water for Syracuse as they come through that point to try to win this semifinal 3 of the Division I fours. It continues to be Oregon State with 1 length over Gonzaga, and Gonzaga now has really started to move away, Lindsay, from Rhode Island. We'll give it to you at the finish line, Adrian. Pretty spaced out field here. We'll see if Rhode Island has some heroics in the last 500 to try to track down a spot for the C final.
Well, and that's a really good call here about Rhode Island. They are coming out of the Atlantic 10 conference and really won that conference championship in dramatic style as the weather was completely marginal. They had quite a few challenges going into the championship. So for them to be here, it definitely took some heroics. And in order for them to get into that C final, they've got to turn it on and do it now. But right now, it is Gonzaga currently in that 3rd place position, looking to pull even farther away from Rhode Island and solidify their spot in that C-level final. And it's Syracuse way out in front now, looking very comfortably in the lead. They've got about 1.5 lengths of open water between themselves and the Beavers of Oregon State. Oregon State, a very strong Pac-12 program from that powerful conference. So Oregon State doing a nice job here in this 4, continuing to hold off Gonzaga, but Gonzaga on a great sprint here as they move towards the final 200 meters of this race to contend for a spot in that C-level final. And as we move forward, Syracuse doing a nice job executing their race plan. Again, this is all about getting better every time you set foot on this race course. So coming out of the heats, coming out of the reps, they've got an extra race under their belt, having to have raced in the reps yesterday. So a lot of energy expenditure out here, but at the fitness that these guys have at this point in the season, they can do anything. Syracuse looking strong now, open water for them. It will be their bow first across the line, followed by the Beavers of Oregon State, and here comes Gonzaga. And now Rhode Island finishing, and then Boston University. Lane 3, Duke. Lane 4, Northeastern. And lane 5, Jacksonville. We'll turn it back over to David and Lindsay for the race call.
All right, we're not quite sitting ready, but want to talk about the start while we have a minute. We talked about the fact that there's a slight wind out of the west. It's really not affecting the water to any extent that would matter down here at the start line. But what's happening with these boats is they pull in under the bridge, under the wave attenuator here at Nathan Benderson Park. They pull into their lanes. There is a human that holds the very tip of the stern, called a stake boat holder. All these volunteers that come out and do that. It's a pretty interesting way to watch a boat go from dead stop to as fast as possible, basically at eye level of the athletes. And then they're going to get into these boots that we have here at Nathan Benderson Park, because it is a FISA race course, the only one in North America that is a FISA course, meaning we have had the World Championships here. We did in 2017. And once they're in that boot, the boat can't move around. You're going to be pointed straight down the lane, and everybody is nice and aligned, meaning that nobody even has an inch on anyone else at the start. We are seeing, coming through 200 meters, the top qualifiers out in front. It's SMU and Pennsylvania in the two far lanes from where we are. If you're watching from an overhead picture, they're on the left. Sitting in third place is Duke. So it is setting up the way that they came into the qualifying for this semifinal for Lindsay. And it's just great up front. It's stroke for stroke between Penn and SMU.
If anything, it was Penn that jumped out quickly on those first 10 strokes or so, just got the boat up to speed up and moving a little bit quicker with the highest force initially off those start strokes. But it is SMU that since then, through the middle 20 or so strokes of that start sequence, again, start sequences typically are, you know, somewhere between 30 or 40 strokes or so, maybe more for a crew before they lengthen out to their base rhythm. And through the second half of that start sequence, it is SMU in the red hull and blue hats on the far side of the course, the side opposite from the start tower, that was a little more efficient, took a little more ground, and now every stroke, as they've lengthened out off of that stride out stroke to their base rhythm, continues to take just ever so slight amount on the rest of the field. As they lengthen even further and cross into that second 500 of the race, it seems that Penn has now started pacing the speed of SMU, and it also seems that Duke has found their feet and are trying to crawl up into the lead as well. Again, top three crews here will advance to tomorrow's C final, and everybody else will go to the D final. So right now it is Duke in the blue unisuits, next to Penn in the gray, next to SMU in the red hull, who are the three crews that are setting a standard so far in this race.
It's basically equidistant, very close to at least. SMU with about a half a length on Penn, Penn with about a half a length on Duke. As soon as I say that, Duke's starting to move up just a little bit. Pennsylvania's first NCAA bid, Lindsay, and this team has really done an awesome job all weekend. And they're trying to put themselves in the C final, just sitting in a solid second place at 800 meters. But it is SMU in that bright red shell, and they took the lead at about 350, 400, and they have not relinquished it. And if anything, they continue to sort of move out ever so slightly from Penn. Penn staying very steady there, and in fact, maybe took a seat back on Duke. So it is equidistant up front. You've got three boats for three spots in the C final. It's about a half a length for SMU over Penn. But Penn about a half a length over Duke, and then it's open water back to Northeastern, and then Jacksonville University.
You know, every time you go to the start line, especially in a race as big as the NCAA championship, it's an opportunity to get faster. You get an extra warm-up, you get an extra cool-down, is extra strokes that you get to take with a hyper focus, because school at this point is over for a lot of these collegiate student athletes. And so you have nothing else to focus on at this point but just your rowing, your recovery. How can we get a little bit better? Coach once told me, once you cross the finish line, if there are 20 things that you think you could have done better, pick one or two and go out and execute those in the next row. So now here these crews are all into their third race of the weekend already, having gone through reps to get to this semifinal race. So as they continue to progress through the weekend, let alone through this piece itself, can they find a little more efficiency and a little more speed that just makes it become more and more fun by being in the boat together?
So I watched the Mustangs from SMU at 1,000 meters. They took some sort of power shift, and they now have broken clear water ahead of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania continues to maintain a half a length lead over Duke. Blue Devils with a couple boat lengths of open water ahead of fourth place Northeastern, who also has clear water on Jacksonville University. And as you said, not only is it progression through the races, getting better each time, but every time you line up, it does not make a difference what the race is, what the schedule says. This is racing. You want to win.
You can see, you can see that SMU in that red hull is starting to smell the finish line. Their lead might be cut into a little bit as Duke puts pressure on Pennsylvania, who's directly behind them. But you could just see the body language of the athletes change just a little bit about 10 strokes ago, where they wanted to see if they could propel the boat a little bit more. The blades are going still pretty direct to the water, which is incredibly key to make the boat go. We want to see those entering and then locking in with the legs, pushing and hanging long off long arms. And that, if you simplify the stroke, push and go, it's going to help you be more and more effective down the course, particularly as the last 500 closes in.
So the top 3 spots appear to be pretty well in hand here. Adrian, as we pass it off to you, a little bit of open water at 500 to go for SMU ahead of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania still a half a length ahead of Duke. Then it's Northeastern and Jacksonville University.
And Lindsay, when they can set planes.
There we go.
Go ahead.
You're back.
I'm live. Okay. I'm going to have them set the lanes since I already told them.
Live.
They're going to go ahead and set lanes. So is that, am I in the right configuration when I press it?
Okay, we're about a minute and a half from the start for semifinal 1 of the Division I fours. Let me set the field for you. Again, left to right, so furthest from the wave attenuator. If you are looking down the race course, lane 1, Washington, lane 2, Texas, lane 3, Michigan, lane 4, Brown, lane 5, Rutgers, and lane 6, Virginia. And I'm looking at all of these women sitting ready. Their blades are buried. Here we go. This is semifinal 1. Again, 3 spots in the grand final up for grabs. And trying to get into that grand final. Oftentimes the team championship comes down to this 4-boat class. And as we talked about quite a bit yesterday, the depths of these programs really show in this 4 event. And we've got, not surprisingly, your top two qualifiers kind of pushing out just a little bit. It's Washington and Texas that have pushed out. Virginia with a very nice start. Also, the boat from Michigan with a good start. Those are kind of your top four as we move into the first 250.
Those crews, Michigan, Washington, Texas, and Brown, are the four crews that qualified through from the heats. It is Rutgers and Virginia, the two crews that had to go through the reps yesterday to get here. So some of these crews have one race under their belts. This will be two. Some of these crews already have two races. This would be three races under their belts to see who's going to be able to take a step forward for not just this boat class, but for their entire team by taking a notch and putting themselves into the A final. Crews, teams overall that have all of their boats in the A finals are the ones that have the most likelihood to score the most points, which contributes to the highest scores for teams overall. And as we saw last year, there was a three-way tie that does end up getting decided by the placement in the varsity 8. So the best that you can place in all of your boat classes is the best thing you can do for your team. And it is over on the far side of the course, Washington, who has decided to set the standard early to say, hey, we want to do this for ourselves. We want to do this for our team. Let's see if we can get even faster this time out on the race course.
University of Washington trying to break the overlap on first-ranked Texas. Washington is a defending national champion in this boat class. So we have a real grudge match up front going on. It is Washington, and they are very close to breaking clear water on Texas. Texas is trying to break clear water on Michigan, and they are a few seats from doing so. Michigan is holding on to about a half a length advantage on Brown and on Virginia. Brown and Virginia extremely close to one another in these lanes 4 and 6, sort of right in front of us on the race course as we come through 750. Washington can't quite break loose of Texas.
There's still a lot of course left to be rowed, so finding your rhythm early and not letting anything else bother you, nothing else that's going on the race course bother you, is only going to do you a service in the long run. The Washington coxswain being out there on the outside over by those people on bicycles on the far side of the course, likely coaches of their own boats and of other teams as well. She being so far, as David mentioned previously, about being a bow-loaded coxswain, she might not be able to see what's going on behind her and doesn't have a boat on her, the coxswain's left side, to work off of. So she must be keeping her athletes incredibly internal, as the rowers themselves can absolutely see what's going on. But they must stay internal, because right now, about to cross into the 1,000, they know this is when the real race starts. Big breath, push reset, open those eyes, stay stacked and relaxed, and push the boat along. Keep throwing it along with your legs to see if you can get a little more distance, which Washington is doing.
Yep, Washington has broke loose. They have 2 seats of open water now on second place Texas. Second place Texas with a couple of seats of open water on Here Comes Brown. Brown has really closed the gap on Michigan. We have a big-time battle going on for that third spot in this semifinal that would put one of these boats into the A final. This is the type of race going on right now between Michigan and Brown that all 10 of these women are going to remember for the rest of their lives, because it's going to come down to these last 750 meters, and one of them is going to miss out on the A final. But out in front continues to be Washington. They do not look like they are letting up whatsoever. The rowing has remained very steady. They have half a length of open water on Texas. Texas now with half a length of open water on dead level Michigan and Brown.
At this point in the race, if I'm Texas and I'm Washington, I'm thinking, okay, breathe, push. You can never be far ahead. The race is not over until the finish line. You are pushing, making sure that you maintain your location. If I'm in with Michigan and Brown, I'm thinking, leave this all on the line. No doubt whatsoever. Because right now is when you have to decide if you're going to step up and put yourself in that A final or not. And what more motivation can that be from that coxswain? I can imagine we're going to see some early sprints out of some of these trailing crews, because it is going to come down to the line. Not just who might be more fit, who is mentally more tough in these next 2 lanes. This battle between Michigan and Brown is going to be a solid one for this last 500 meters. How close into Texas can they get in 500 meters?
We're going to pass it off to you, Adrian, as they come through 500 meters to go. It is Washington with half a length clear water back to Texas. Texas half a length of clear water back to dead level Brown and Michigan. And then behind them, almost dead level, are Virginia and Rutgers. What a race.
And what a race indeed. I am watching these two crews, Michigan and Brown, just battle each other out. They are literally pacing each other. So blades in the water at the same time. And I am not seeing any movement between these two boats. Nobody has broken loose. They are just dead level, side by side. It is going to come down to the wire between these two crews. But what is clear is it is all about the women of Washington, well out in front. At that 500 meter to go line, they had a 4-second lead over Texas. And, you know, just really kind of an upset, except that Washington is the defending champion. They know this race. And at least the stroke seat, Taylor Buell, she was in that winning boat last year. She is not going to relinquish that crown easily. So here we see Washington way out in front now, almost 2 lengths of open water in front of Texas. And then still that great battle here between Michigan and Brown. It looks to me as if Brown might have the upper hand right now coming into these final strokes, maybe just by about a seat or maybe 2, as their boat just propels towards that finish line, taking the stroke rate up. They are known for their high stroke rates through the body of the piece. Right here, I've got them clocked upwards of 40 strokes a minute coming into these final strokes. Final 50 meters here. It will be Brown to garner that 3rd place position, just edging out Michigan. But right now, it is the Huskies crossing the line to get into that grand final, just ahead of Texas. And here comes Bruno. Michigan crossing, and then now here comes Rutgers and Virginia. So unofficially, Michigan, Rutgers, and Virginia moving on to the petite final. Washington, Texas, and Brown moving on to the grand final tomorrow. Okay, and heading back up to the start for this second semifinal for the Division I fours. The progression will be the top 3 move into the grand finals for tomorrow. The remaining boats will move on to the petite level final. In lane 1, Stanford. Lane 2, Princeton. Lane 3, Ohio State. Lane 4, Yale. Lane 5, California. And lane 6, Southern California.
Some of the things that we noticed down here at the start line, I want to give you a little experience and anecdote. I was watching the California boat trying to get into their boot, and the bow woman was really helping out the coxswain. They finally got into the boot, and then the coxswain gave knuckles to the bow woman once they got in there, and everybody's ready to go. Here we go, 6 boats across, our final semifinal of the Division I level here at day 2 of our 2022 NCAA championships. Who wants that lead early? It does look like sort of your top qualifiers starting to push out, trying to push out up there in lanes 1 and 2, Stanford and Princeton. Everybody's still in it here as they come through 100 meters. And it's always exciting to be down here. We love it being in the commentary car because we are so close to the racing.
And one another.
Yeah, and you just see all of the energy. You can feel it. Even with the windows up, it's just so much energy put into making the boat go from a dead stop to as fast as possible as Stanford starts to move out.
From the very get-go, it was Stanford that even though it looked like their rate might not have been as high, but again, it can be deceiving. If it's incredibly efficient, it's going to look lower than it actually is, and you could just see how the blades were taking the water and propelling the boat along very efficiently and effectively off of their start sequence. And it seems like they may have lengthened out a hair sooner than some of the other crews who started with a slightly higher stroke rate, like Princeton and Ohio State, who are next to them, the next 2 crews next to them. But their lengthen allowed them to take almost a half a length or so. That after that, from that lengthen, now that Ohio State has also lengthened out, they want to creep up in there to etch their names on that A final for tomorrow to earn a spot to potentially be national champions in this particular event. So Stanford is still maintaining their lead that they took early by a similar margin to what they grabbed in the first 20 strokes or so. And it is Princeton and Ohio State, the next 2 crews nearest to Stanford on the far side of the course. So those 3 crews on the far side of the course are the ones who are separating themselves out early here and want to tell the rest of the field that they want those next 3 qualifying spots to round out the A final tomorrow.
As they come through 600 meters, your leader continues to be Stanford, half a length ahead of Princeton. Princeton with a deck ahead of Ohio State. Connected with Ohio State, the only other crew connected with those 3 is Yale. Yale has a full length on essentially dead level Southern California and California in the adjacent lanes right in front of us here on the wave attenuator. Still beautiful flat water here at Nathan Benderson Park. I'm sure that these women in these 4s are very thankful for that. And these coxswains laying down in the fronts of the boats. We talked about sort of if you get a lead, it's very different than being behind when you're a coxswain in these boats, because if you're out in front, you really cannot see what's going on behind you. You start having to have a dialogue with the bow woman. But if you are behind, you are in perfect position to see exactly what's going on with your bow. Is it moving into the boats in front of you that you're trying to track down? It becomes a very easy situation for the coxswain to say, look, we just started moving. Let's keep moving. I'm watching us move. So Stanford has that half a length advantage over Princeton, and then Ohio State a half a length behind Princeton. Behind Princeton, and then Ohio State has now broken the overlap on Yale.
And it does seem that half a length lead that Stanford picked up in the first 20 strokes of the race is what they're holding right now. So since these 2 crews, Princeton and Stanford in particular, in those far 2 lanes, they are the highest qualifying crews in this race right now. They came straight from their heats, having won their heats, to be here in this particular semifinal. They did not have to go through a rep to get here, but it is from the very beginning in the first 20 strokes of the race, that lead that Stanford picked up early. Both Princeton and Stanford seem to be pacing one another ever since. The question is, when that 500 meters to go happens, will Princeton rev it up with a little bit of race strategy? Will they turn it on here in the third 500? Were they just kind of killing time and waiting to be in striking distance, right? You don't always have to be advancing on the crew as long as you get a margin and maintain that contact. That proves to you that you're being efficient. After that, okay, do we have another gear? I bet they don't know that we do. And even if we don't, we're going to convince ourselves that we do, because desire, right? The mind is so much stronger than what your body might be telling you. And that is something that rowers practice a lot. Step up to the edge, stare over the edge, and be okay with pushing the limits little by little every single day. And then you get to do it in a race. So little by little, every single stroke. Can I push it a little more, a little more, a little bit more?
So I'm watching these two boats out front, Lindsay, and it is Stanford at 35 strokes a minute. It's Princeton at 37 strokes a minute. Is that going to come into play? Typically it would, from the standpoint of it may be difficult for Princeton to track down Stanford because Stanford has more space to move. They have more gears to potentially find in terms of how many times they're going to strike the water with their blades and pull through than Princeton, but Princeton is hanging tough. So as they come through 500 meters to go, we still have this kind of relatively spaced out field with these three boats out in front, Clearwater back to fourth place Yale. It is about 3/4 of a length advantage for Stanford with 500 meters left ahead of Princeton. Princeton with a full length, maybe a seat of open water back to third place Ohio State. Ohio State with almost a full length of open water back to Yale. Yale with a couple seats of open water back to California, and California with a full length on Southern California. We'll give it to you, Adrian.
And Stanford just taking care of business here as they push themselves into the spectator area. Again, what David and Lindsay are seeing out there on the race course that may be a little more difficult for us to see from the spectator spot is that sense of relaxation and confidence that's evident in their bodies. So Stanford just playing defense at this point, just holding off Princeton, Princeton winding it up, a little bit higher stroke rate throughout the body of the piece, but again, holding tight. Are they poised to make their move and maybe come up and take a little bit of that lead away from Stanford? But Stanford, I think, a very savvy crew and very cognizant of exactly where they are in the race, not having to expend any more energy than is necessary to do what they have to do to take care of business. So Stanford out in the lead. They've extended that out to about a 2 to 3 second lead at this point. Princeton behind them, almost open water back, and then right behind them it will be Ohio State rounding out those top 3 spots to move into the grand finals tomorrow. Behind Ohio State by open water, it will be a very fast boat from Yale. Yale looking very strong, just not quite able to match the speed of these top 3 crews. Behind them, California in 5th, and then Southern California in 6th. But here comes Stanford to the line to take that top spot moving into the grand finals. And coming up, we have the first of the Division III second eights finals. So this is the petite level final. In lane 1, St. Mary's. Excuse me, this would be in the center of the lane. It looks like lane 6, sorry, St. Mary's, and lane 7, Pacific Lutheran. So a dual match here in this petite final.
Yeah.
All right, we're on the race course with a match race This is the second final of the Division III second eights for places 7 and 8 in the nation in the Division III second eights. And they are right in front of us here using lanes 5 and 6 here at Nathan Betterson Park. And your two competitors are Pacific Lutheran and St. Mary's, Maryland. And neither one of them really seems to have done anything off the start that's necessarily probably going to matter. As we approach 250, they are within a seat of one another. It's maybe a slight lead for St. Mary's right in front of us, and that lead is only about 2 feet.
It sure is, and dual races are very common in collegiate rowing, so just having two crews out here on the water is something that both of these teams are likely used to. And by virtue of having just two crews out here, what makes it different is there's only one other boat for the coxswain to pay attention to. There's only one other boat for the rowers to sense here, and it is the originally slated for lanes 3 and 4, so it is St. Mary's, Maryland that's going to be on this closest inside lane to the attenuator, with Pacific Lutheran on the opposite side as they come down the race course. Again, this is the petite final for the Division III second eights, so these two boats are vying for second and 8th place in their given class.
So same exact gap. Maybe it's a 5-foot lead now in front of us for St. Mary's over Pacific Lutheran. So this is really as good as it could get as we approach 500 meters. Either of these boats with 1,500 meters left could do anything at this point. And a lot of times in match races, which Lindsay did remark are pretty typical at the collegiate level, especially at the division in Division III. I'm a former Division III athlete, and almost all of our races were dual races throughout the season. They get very interesting in my mind from a strategy standpoint, because if there is an ability for some reason for your crew to really find like a tremendous amount of speed in a particular point in time, sometimes that can just flat out decide the race. Because if you could take, half a length, 3/4 of a length over 20 strokes, sometimes that just ends the race, because at that point you can then just sort of hang on because you're out in front. And we're starting to see St. Mary's squeeze out more and more of a lead as we approach 750.
And it appears that right around the 750 mark, they may be taking a move. Either that or their fitness is showing here, where they do seem to be taking seat by seat. It was relatively even. Pacific Lutheran and St. Mary's pacing one another for the first 600, 700 meters or so of this race. And now it is clearly St. Mary's who has decided to just go seat by seat, little by little, over the previous 500 meters to get close to wanting a full length of lead at this point. If I'm in the Pacific Lutheran boat, I'm thinking to myself, okay, we need to go now. We need to hang with them. We need to make sure that we can stay with them and not let them go at this point in the race, because if we do, there's a lot of race left to be rowed, and that will only give them confidence. That will only give them confidence to continue extending their lead. So Pacific Lutheran needs to decide to stay connected, stay internal within their hull, to move their hull to the best of their ability, and that will enable them to stay connected with St. Mary's, Maryland, who is continuing to lengthen out a little bit more ever so slightly as they cross over to the second 1,000 of this race.
So we're in the second half of the race. It's a full length, and maybe has just broken the overlap. St. Mary's just ahead of the Lutes. The Lutes are at a much lower stroke rating, however, of about 4 beats lower than St. Mary's. So again, there are different strategies without question in terms of how you're going to row any given race. Obviously, St. Mary's is comfortable at a higher pace, and it is working for them to the point where they now have about 3 or 4 seats of open water on the Lutes. But the Lutes potentially have more speed gears to find in this second half of the race. So again, if I'm sitting in the coxswain seat of the Pacific Lutheran boat, I'm saying, look, this is where we stand. This is how much we have left in terms of race course, and this is what we're going to do. And when we start finding some positive momentum, we start closing the gap a little bit, doing it with stroke rating or with power or with technique or motivation. You start to build it, and you start to build it, and you try to keep that momentum going to try to then track down St. Mary's. St. Mary's, though, looks strong out front. Again, rowing higher, but they do have about a half a length of open water on the Lutes.
in order to find speed at this point, it's, taking from my own rowing career now into a coaching career, I like to think of taking power moves as find the focus first. What's the technical focus that brings the crew together, zips them up so that everyone's really working together, so that any extra energy that's being expended is not wasted, but rather fully utilized. So from a coxing standpoint, find the technical adjustment that will bring the crew together first, and then once that's zipped up and tidy, everyone's moving together, then go, okay, now that we're together, let's find a little bit more speed. And certainly, before you move into the last 500 of the race is when you would want to do that. You want to set yourself up for the best possible closing 500, and certainly best sprint possible, because when it's time to sprint, you don't just find more effort. There isn't more effort usually to be found. It has to be done from a technical standpoint, and everyone must do it together.
We're going to hand it to you, Adrian. It is a 3/4 length open water advantage for St. Mary's over Pacific Lutheran in this final two of the Division III second eights.
And thank you so much, David and Lindsay. I love really hearing about the mentality of what it's like to be in a match race or a duel like this. I mean, this is a petite level final at the national championships. And for these programs, it is so important to take these strokes and put themselves on the map. In particular, St. Mary's, a very, very young program. Their coach just in her 4th year, bringing her team to the national championships. They were able to dethrone Washington College, who is an 8-time Mid-Atlantic Conference champion and a perennial powerhouse here at the national championships. So St. Mary's, a new contender on the national stage. Think about what that means for their program. It was sure to bolster them in years coming forward, because they're going to want to come back. And doing a job like they are right now, just taking those strokes and making it feel good as they wrap up their season at a national championship race, just an amazing moment for this program. So St. Mary's, the Seahawks, moving themselves towards that finish line with an open water lead over Pacific Lutheran. Pacific Lutheran, a storied program from the Pacific Northwest. They are a perennial favorite here at the NCAA championships, always very strong in their conference. And so here also wrapping up their NCAA appearance in this second varsity 8 for Division III. All right, and up next, this will be our first race to crown a national champion. This would be an individual championship, and you can see Wellesley there with a relaxed dance in the boat, getting loose, getting ready. So let me give you the lane assignments here. This would be Wellesley in lane 1, Bates in lane 3, Ithaca College in lane 4, Williams in lane 5, Tufts in lane 6, and WPI in lane 7.
Here we are at the start of the Division III Second 8 Grand Final, the Final 1. This is the race that will decide the national champion in the Division III Second 8. 4 crews From the far side to the near side of the race course, Wellesley, Bates, Ithaca, and Williams qualified direct to this final out of their heats. It was Tufts and WPI on the two nearest lanes that had to go through the reps. So some of these crews have raced once to get here, some have raced twice to get here, but I guarantee that all 6 of them want to clinch that national title for their team. And as they take off, it is in the middle in those yellow hats, going back and forth with Bates, Ithaca and Bates, along with Wellesley on the far side, those 3 crews that are starting to inch out for an early lead. But we're just in the first 200 meters here. What will unfold over the course of the next 2,000?
So Bates are your defending national champions as a team, as well as in this boat class as we come through 250. Bates is a deck down on Wellesley. So Wellesley has the lead at 250. They're a deck ahead of Bates. Bates is a deck ahead of both Ithaca, and now Williams is bringing it very close to Ithaca. Probably 3 feet behind Ithaca is Williams in 4th place. Then it's the Engineers of WPI sitting in 5th place, just ahead of the Jumbos of Tufts. And so a lot of these boats have seen each other. A lot of them are from the New England Small College Athletic Conference, and they have raced each other potentially, or actually multiple times this season. And it is Wellesley continuing to lead up there, if you're watching from behind, on the left side of the screen in their blue and white. And here comes Bates, though. They are really starting to close the gap. At 500 meters, it may end up being dead level between the two. So it's Bates and Wellesley, and then it's dead level for 3rd place right now between Ithaca and Williams. What a race we've got going on, because you cannot discount even the other 2 boats. WPI is only sitting about 3 seats behind 4th place Williams.
So now with this lane adjustment, for those of you just joining us, the lane adjustment that's been made because of a slight crosswind that we have going on here, rather than creating a typical chevron pattern that would normally create, if the speed were to fall exactly as predicted, would create a triangle pattern as the race unfolds. It instead groups each crew into pairs almost. So the predicted fastest 2 crews are on the far side of the course in lanes 2 and 3, as the coxswain and referees would read. The next 2 fastest are in the next 2 lanes over, and then the next 2 potential fastest are in the next 2 lanes over. So creating more of a slant instead of that triangle pattern as we go through, which is actually a little bit of what you are seeing now that we're into the 700, just passing 750 meters of this race. Now, Wellesley had the early lead, but Bates certainly did overtake them, crossing into that 500. And as those 2 teams have been vying for the lead, it has allowed both of them to take a little bit, not quite a length, but nearly a length for Bates at this point on the next 3rd place Ithaca, who is hanging right in there, but who has taken Williams right with them.
Yeah, it's not real comfortable for that bronze medal right now from Ithaca, because they're getting just pressed every single stroke by the Eefs of Williams. But right now it's the Bobcats. They have asserted themselves. They really started, as I was watching, at around 500 meters. And as we come through the halfway point, the Bobcats of Bates are going to be out in front of this field, and it's going to be by about a half a length ahead of Wellesley. Wellesley's still sitting in 2nd place, about a half a length ahead of Ithaca. And as soon as I started talking in this segment, Ithaca has now moved away quite a bit from Williams. They've taken about 2 or 3 seats just since I have been gabbing, and really are starting to move Ithaca.
And along with Ithaca, it did seem that perhaps Ithaca took a move right around the 1,000. Maybe that was part of their race plan, and when they did, Bates did that as well. You could see the body language of the athletes shift a little bit. Now that we've, chipped away 1,000 meters, what can we do with the second half of this race? Maybe they took a nice big breath, sat up, opened their eyes, and said, okay, reset, here we go. 3rd 500 is that point where, everyone's lungs are burning. Everyone's legs are fatigued. But it's not a surprise. You enter this sport knowing this is going to be really, really hard. And that takes away some of that sting. You are putting yourself in that position. It's your decision to make it feel that way. But the way that it feels when whomever comes across this line first, earning that national championship in this boat class, that far outweighs the way that any of this feels right now in terms of breathing and pushing and fatigue. They're just thinking, this is our chance to leave a legacy with our team. This is our chance to prove what we are to one another and to ourselves. So let's sit up and take a little more lead. And if that seems to be inch by inch what Bates is attempting to do in this third 500.
They're attempting it, but Wellesley is just not letting it happen. This is our first national championship race. Somebody is going to be a national champion. Right now it looks like it's going to be either Bates or Wellesley, although Ithaca and Williams are really starting to push. 500 meters left. It's the Bates Bobcats out in front of Wellesley. The blue are a full length ahead of Ithaca. Ithaca with half a length ahead of Williams. And then it is WPI just a few seats of Clearwater behind Williams and a length ahead of the Tufts Jumbos. We're going to pass it to you, Adrian. Up front, can Wellesley find some speed, or is it going to be another Bates National Championship?
And indeed, coming out of the heats, Wellesley did have the fastest time of the day, just a few seconds in front of Bates, but Bates has the experience in that program. So as we talk about legacy, that's what we're talking about here. Having been on the national stage, you know exactly what it takes as you move from the heats to the finals. You know exactly what mentality to bring. Bates is actually a pretty young program this year. They only have 2 seniors on the entire team. So think about what sort of attitude they are setting for the rest of the program. Bates out in front just by about 2 seats right now over Wellesley, and then tightening up for that third spot. Again, we have hardware on the line here. As they come down to the line, it is Ithaca just ahead of Williams. Williams really turning it on. Also Williams, a storied program. All of these teams, I can't say enough about how amazing they have done on the national stage, just jockeying for position year after year. But right now, it is the defending champion in this event. The Bates Bobcats just barely out in front, but take a look at Wellesley. Take a look at Wellesley right now, turning it on. They just hit a different gear as they come towards this finish line. Folks, this is going to be another one of those photo finishes. It is going to come down to whose blades are in the water at the right time. I think Bates is going to be able to hold on to it just by a deck, and they did. That is Bates for your national championship, followed by Wellesley, and here comes Ithaca in third, Williams in fourth, WPI in that 5th place spot, and the Jumbos of Tufts coming in 6th. And as we move forward into our next races, we are actually going to make a switch over to Division II. So a new format for the national championships here as we mix Division II and Division III on the schedule. So coming up next, it will be the petite level final for the Division II fours. We will just have 2 boats on the course. And I'll turn it over to David and Lindsay as we ready ourselves for that event. All right, and let's go ahead and give you the lane assignments here. Coming down the closest to the shoreline at this point will be Western Washington in lane 6, and right next to them in lane 7, Jefferson.
And we're off here from the start in the Division II 4 Final 2. And right here in the first 100 meters, that's what those red buoys designate. It's the first 100 meters of the course. It is Western Washington in those bright yellow-green visors, who right from the get-go has taken a very early, decisive lead over Jefferson, who's on the near shore. Western Washington, having come to this championship numerous times in the history of the program, is no stranger to being at the NCAA championship. So for them to take off this quickly from the start should not be a surprise. We've seen fast starts out of them so far this weekend. The question is, can they go and build off of this start? Have a strong start, and then also have a solid base rhythm. So having a couple of races under their belts at this point in the regatta, perhaps they've found a few technical adjustments that will help them be efficient all the way down the course, so that the work they've done early to get off the line quickly will pay them off in the long run by being efficient and just continuing to motor down the course in this Division II 4's Final 2.
So I was looking at the stroke ratings. They're both at about 35 strokes a minute. So there is no understroking or overstroking going on between these two boats. They're really at the same pace in terms of a strike rate. And as I have said multiple times, a race is a race. This may be the second level final, but one of them is going to finish 5th in the nation in this Division II 4s category. And right now it's Western Washington that wants to do it. And Jefferson's going to have to really start to think about making sure, if you're that Jefferson, Coxon, Savannah, Orlando, that you're making sure that at a minimum, you're not letting Western Washington continue to move away from you. These 4s really can change speeds fairly dramatically, and so there could be a lot of work done in this middle 1,000 by Jefferson, but it has to start with not letting Western Washington continue a momentum away. And that does look like what's happening to my eye, Lindsay. They are not letting Western Washington move away from them, even though there's about 3/4 of a length of open water between the two.
There is indeed a bit of open water, but think about, again, a basketball team goes into halftime down by 20, and they turn around. That whole game can turn around just in half, and we haven't even made it to the halfway point yet. So that is something that the Jefferson crew could consider is, hey, you know what? We still have a lot of strokes left to take, but we need to make that decision as early as we possibly can, because if we do give them too much of a margin too soon, then it'll be a difficult amount of margin to make up over the long run. But by stopping that walk and then pacing, that is a bit of mental leverage that the coxswain can then use and go, okay, this change, now we're pacing them. Let's do this for 10 strokes, keep pacing them. Can we now go a hair faster by doing something better together so that we can maybe start to cut into that lead and take it into 7 to 10 stroke chunks at a time to gradually build the crew's confidence for the remainder of the race?
So I'm using my old coxswain peripheral vision, and I'm looking at the tip of the stern of Western Washington. I'm looking at the tip of the bow of Jefferson right in front of me here on the wave attenuator at Nathan Benderson Park. And I am watching Western Washington take about an inch of stroke at this point. So they are starting to continue to move away, is Western Washington, from Jefferson. And as we approach the halfway point, it is these volt-colored visors that are moving away, and they are showing that it's going to be very difficult for Jefferson to get into them in these last 1,000 meters, because if you look at the rowing, it has remained extremely consistent as well, Lindsay. So if the rowing remains consistent and you're sitting out here and the bow woman is talking to the coxswain saying, look, we just continue to move away, you know, if you're the other 3 rowers in that boat, that you're doing what you need to be doing, whether you're looking at the bow of Jefferson or not.
And when you're a rower and you see the backs of the crew that you're racing against, that does give you confidence, and because it gives you the idea, you can see what they're doing. You can see any move. Even if the coxswain can't, the rowers themselves can, and then you go, okay, we know what we're doing. It's being effective. It's a very obvious line of sight at that point. And that way you can anticipate what's going to happen before it necessarily even happens. So at this point, as we move through the third 500, Western Washington, as they crossed over the 1,000, it did seem that they are continuing with their race plan, continuing to take the moves that they have prescribed in this race, and because they want to continue to lengthen out from here, maybe say, hey guys, we wanted to be in that final one, and we're going to post a time that says so.
Just saw the Western Washington coxswain for the first time get up and look back. And typically, you know, when I coach coxswains or when I was a coxswain, it's not terribly advisable, but in this situation, when you've got 30 clear meters, I think it's okay. So that may be the last glance that that the coxswain Claudia Webster is going to make for Western Washington as they start to get through 1,400 meters, 600 meters to win this final two of the Division II fours. And the rowing looks good. The water is flat. They have a clear lane in front of them. And you're right. They're going to try to lay down a time. They are going to leave it on the water. This is it. This is the end of their championships. They came all the way from Washington, and this is their last race. So you know all of these athletes, whether they're seniors or not, they are going to try to have the best race of their lives. As we get into the last 500 meters, we're going to hand it off to you at the finish line tower, Adrian. It's Western Washington, well clear of Thomas Jefferson.
And thank you so much, David and Lindsay. Division II rowing is near and dear to my heart, as that was the division that I spent a couple of years coaching at, so I know these teams really well. Western Washington is just legendary. They're 8-time national champions at the Division II level, winning from 2005 to 2011. I mean, that is an amazing streak. They also won again in 2017. They were runners-up in 2018, 2019, champion in 2017, runner-up in 2018, and then they missed out on the last couple of years. And in fact, this year has been a bit of an inconsistent year for them, and they've really garnered speed as the season has progressed. So improving every single time they've come out on the race course at this championship. Their head coach, John Fuchs, not able to make it to this event. That's a huge impact on a team. And while their assistant coach, Courtney Muller, is accompanying them, it's got to be emotionally a little bit hard not to have that strong leader that you look up to every single day to be here. So hats off to Western Washington for putting together a fabulous race here in this petite level final while coming through some hardship at the championship. So Western Washington in those neon green visors, wrapping it up at the NCAAs. Great season for them. And here they are in their final strokes of this event. Behind them, the Thomas Jefferson Rams. They are also a familiar face at the national championships. The highest finish they had was 3rd place as a team in 2010. And they've been here several times, so this is not unfamiliar territory to them. Their head coach, Chris O'Brien, really knowing what he is doing. He's going to bring these guys back again, and that program is going to gear themselves up for another championship appearance, I'm certain, next year. But it is Western across the line. Jefferson moving into their final strokes as we wrap up this petite final for the Division II teams. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the first grand final for Division II. We will be crowning a national championship after this event, at least in an individual event, because obviously it comes down to points. For Division II, each team has to field an 8 and a 4. So while it's lovely to be an individual champion in either of those boats, you obviously want the team title. So the two teams that are going to vie for that today are going to be Embry-Riddle and Mercyhurst. So in lane 4, Embry-Riddle. In lane 5, Seattle Pacific. In lane 6, Central Oklahoma. And lane 7, Mercyhurst. And we have a start, turning it over to David and Lindsay to take this race away.
We have a clean start down here at the Division II Fours grand final here at the 2022 NCAA Championships. A national champion will be crowned in less than 2,000 meters. And at the looks of it from the start, all four of these crews very much know that and want to keep that national championship possibility in their minds. It is Embry-Riddle with the yellow blades on the far side of the course, and Mercyhurst, who were the direct qualifiers in this event. If you won your heat, it was top. The winner only went straight to this grand final, whereas the outside crews, Central Oklahoma and Seattle Pacific, had to go through a rep to make that happen. So as the coxswain and referees read left to right, so coming down the course would be Embry-Riddle, Mercyhurst, Central Oklahoma, and then Seattle Pacific. Embry-Riddle had a fantastic row in their heat, taking it by a very large margin. Central Oklahoma, part of the three-time defending national champion, 2018, 2019, and 2021. Those are the two crews out in front right now who are setting a pace, setting the standard, with Mercyhurst in the green sandwiched in between them. Mercyhurst is the one program here out of the 6 Division II programs who qualified both their 4 and their 8 direct to the final. So even though they're a little bit back of the pack right now, do not discount them for the potential as this race continues.
This is an awesome fours race. We have 3 boats connected still as they approach 500 meters in our 2,000-meter race course. It is Seattle Pacific, who is a little bit off the pace, about a length of open water behind Mercyhurst. But as we come through 500, it is a half a length advantage for Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University out of Daytona Beach, Florida. And they lead Central Oklahoma by that half a length advantage. Central Oklahoma has about a deck, almost the height of a coxswain laying down, ahead of Mercyhurst. And Mercyhurst, I keep seeing their bow just start to kind of inch into the mix here. I think this is going to get closer amongst these 3 boats as we move through this race. Embry-Riddle is staying very steady out in front. They remain about a half a length out in front of Central Oklahoma, but Central Oklahoma's lead on Mercyhurst is starting to dwindle. So here comes Mercyhurst. They're moving a little bit faster than Central Oklahoma at this point in the race course as we approach 750. And so we're in the middle of the second 500, but it remains a very steady row out front, and they continue to have a half a length advantage, even though we have a new second place, which is Mercyhurst. That is Embry-Riddle with that advantage.
And Mercyhurst just stayed patient with it. They weren't shaken by the fact that the crews on either side of them were a little bit ahead. It doesn't seem that they've taken a major move to make this happen. They've just gotten into their rhythm. They've solidified their rhythm. They've zipped up their similarity, their rhythm, as the previous 750 meters have ticked by. And just by staying together like that, that shows a confidence and maturity of race style that allows them to be, you know what, we're okay where we are right now. We're going to rely on our plan and what we're doing in our lane to put us where we want to be. And as they've done that, they have come through Central Oklahoma, but Embry-Riddle out there with the yellow blades is still maintaining their lead. You can take a look at the bow woman there in that Embry-Riddle 4. Her blade is going direct to the water. It's almost like she's picking up the boat to make it light for the rest of her teammates. She's being very direct, and by virtue of doing that, she's helping stabilize that boat for her teammates, which allows everybody just to be more efficient together. The more stable the hull actually is, the less wobbly it is, the more solid of a platform it is. It just makes everybody's job easier.
Embry-Riddle 2/3 of a length advantage right now at about 1150 ahead of Mercyhurst. Mercyhurst with half a length on 3rd place, Central Oklahoma. Those are your top 3. Seattle Pacific also in the race, just a couple lengths behind Central Oklahoma. And it's getting a little bit closer up front. As soon as I started talking, Mercyhurst started moving both away from Central Oklahoma and started closing the gap on Embry-Riddle. All these boats going to come through this red buoy line here at 1250, 750 meters left for a national championship in the Division II Fours. It continues to be Embry-Riddle Are they going to be able to hang on? Here comes Mercyhurst.
Mercyhurst has just stayed very tidy, stayed very together, and it's almost as if their coxswain sitting down there very low in the boat has said, okay, step one, get off the line. Okay, let's see where we are. Step two, chip away at Central Oklahoma. Check, done. Now chip away at Embry-Riddle. And if you're at this point in the race and you're putting pressure on the lead crew, now you're making them start to wonder what is happening, because Mercyhurst, again, hasn't taken a major move. They've just made it happen 1 inch stroke per stroke down the course. And if they keep moving the way that they are little by little, Embry-Riddle either has to answer with something, or Mercyhurst is going to take over in the next 600, 550 meters of the race. How many strokes do we have? All right, take them one at a time, get 1 inch per stroke, and go.
Mercyhurst certainly has the momentum. 500 meters to a national championship, though. It is still Embry-Riddle. I haven't seen the coxswain even see Mercyhurst yet in that Embry-Riddle boat, though, and they are coming. The momentum, as I said, with Mercyhurst, they're about to break into level with Embry-Riddle. Those are your top two as they come through. Sitting in third place is still the boat from Central Oklahoma ahead of Seattle Pacific. We're going to hand it to you, Adrian, at the finish line.
If you're a Lakers fan, you're going to want to get yourself down to the shoreline, because Mercyhurst just moved into the lead. Mercyhurst now with 1 seat over Embry-Riddle. Embry-Riddle with a fantastic four. They have had an amazing season, particularly in this boat. But what we saw yesterday in the heats is that Mercyhurst has another gear. In that third 500, that's where they show their fitness, their confidence, and their patience, as they can just chip away at another crew. And they're doing that right now. But Embry-Riddle, they're not going to relinquish that lead spot so easily. It's probably going to come down to the wire here in this race for the Division II National Championship in this event. 250 meters to go. Embry-Riddle, Mercyhurst, dead even. We're going to keep our eye on them. Behind them, the 3-time national champion, Central Oklahoma. They are chasing for a medal at this point, with several lengths of open water in front of Seattle Pacific, the Falcons. But coming down, is it going to be Mercyhurst? Is it going to be Embry-Riddle? I believe that Mercyhurst has that upper advantage as they come through. Final strokes for them towards that gold medal. Last year, they were the runner-up. This year, they want to make sure that they are on top of that podium. Mercyhurst coming in, looking golden here for their final few strokes towards the national championship for Division II. Embry-Riddle crossing the line now. Central Oklahoma with the bronze. All right, and we're going to move back over to Division III racing. Coming up will be the first eights and the petite level final, with just 2 boats on the water. Pacific Lutheran rowing out of lane 6. And St. Mary's rowing closest to shore in lane 7.
Okay, we're on the race course now with final two of the Division III first eights, and it's a match race between Pacific Lutheran and St. Mary's. As we also saw with the fours from these teams, both good, clean starts, and they are dead level as they come through and finish those red buoys. They're into the second 100 meters of our 2,000-meter race course, and sort of different styles of rowing to some extent. St. Mary's very upright right in front of us. Pacific Lutheran kind of moving their bodies back and forth just a little bit more. So that's kind of interesting to watch from the side here as we start to see Pacific Lutheran moving out from St. Mary's at 250. They have about a deck.
As these two crews battle it out, we've just crossed into maybe 30 strokes of the race. You can see there Pacific Lutheran on the far side in the black unisuits, St. Mary's of Maryland in the suits with the lighter colored stripes down this side. You could just see where Pacific Lutheran took their length, and it was an obvious shift in rate, an obvious shift in stroke length, which is, it's nice to see where you can see that obvious shift, because that tells you that everyone's dialed into at least what the coxswain is saying. And the most important thing down the course is to stay perked up to what your teammates are doing in the boat, to stay together, to make sure that everything stays together, to be as efficient as possible all the way down the course. And as Pacific Lutheran lengthened out, St. Mary's, they took maybe a couple of seats in that, but St. Mary's is just sitting tidy, trying to stay together and buy some time to go, okay, maybe they took a move, we're going to just stay the course with what we're doing, and then it'll be our turn.
And I want to correct myself. I said in the fours they were eights before, the second eights. But these two teams did match race. It is still the Lutes out in front, and it's about a half a length. One of the things that you notice when you're looking at only two boats as opposed to six, where your eyes are kind of all over the place, I'm just looking at the equipment in the Lutes boat. They actually have some zip ties that are sticking up from the gunnels. What does that mean? Well, they're typically there so that everybody is getting their hands out to where they need to get them out to based upon how the coach wants them to row. And so that's something that I'm seeing in that boat right across from me here as we come through 750, and the Lutes have about a 3/4 length advantage. I'm watching the coxswain in the Lutes boat, Jessie Doherty. She is focused on that bow ball of St. Mary's. She just keeps looking at it. And that's exactly what I would be doing as well, and I would be saying, look, women, this is it. Let's break the overlap and break their backs and put ourselves in a situation where it's going to be very difficult for them to come back on us. And it's one of those things where if you build it up and then you do it, it is going to be very difficult for St. Mary's to ever come back, because the amount of positivity that shoots down the boat is just amazing from something like that. And she just keeps looking back at it, and they have almost broken that overlap.
And then once you cross into the 1,000, they're approaching the 1,000, both of these crews here in this first eights final two for the Division III. Maybe she's going to use that and go, all right, we took a lead in the first 1,000. Can we get another? We took a length in the first 1,000. Can we take another length in the second 1,000? And that just, again, builds on that positive snowball of positive energy, because all the time, what is it? It's not about don't do this. It's about, yes, go now. Here we go. Staying positive the whole time. It's incredible how different such slight changes in language just to create positive only concepts really elevates your crew. And that seems to be what this coxswain has done. They've nearly broken to clear water as we're getting into the third 500 of this race. That is Pacific Lutheran in the black unisuits with the yellow blades on the tips of their oars, that is extending their lead here at this NCAA championship final. Another thing with how David was taking a look at some of the equipment, if you take a look at this, the hull, the way that it's rigged for Pacific Lutheran, you'll see two blades side by side. Instead of having the traditional stagger that you see on most of these eights, you see on this the blades that are closest to the shoreline. That's the starboard side. You have two starboard oars back to back to one another. That's called a bucket rig. It's uniquely designed for various reasons. Coaches have a couple of different reasons for why they use them. It usually helps keep crews together in terms of making sure that you're staying together and following one another. It can also be used to help with leverage. But just to give you a few tips on what's going on here with some of the different rigging differences that you see. But Again, as we move well through this third 500, Pacific Lutheran does seem to continue to extend their lead over St. Mary's of Maryland.
So if I'm conversely the St. Mary's coxswain, Aaron Lanham, and I've got about 3 or 4 seats of open water that I need to close, I'm thinking about anything that I have in my book. I know my crew. I've been in this boat, probably for much of the year, or know the athletes, and I'm thinking, what can I do to shift the speed here? What can I do to start building some momentum? And that's what she's thinking, and she's going to pull everything out, because this is it. This is the last race at the NCAA championships for these 2 boats, but it's Pacific Lutheran with open water ahead of St. Mary's as we pass it off to you, Adrian.
All right. Thank you, David and Lindsay, for bringing this dual race towards us and teaching us a little bit more about the sport, especially if you're new. It's kind of nice to know about those little tidbits of information regarding how the boats are rigged, what the rowers might be doing in any particular aspect of the race. But Pacific Lutheran taking the upper hand right now in this petite final. They are a 6-time defending champion in their conference out of the Northwest, and they are a familiar face here at the national championships. Their best performance was in 2016, where they took 4th as a team. And particularly bittersweet this season, this is their coach, head coach Andy Foltz. It's his last year in that position as he transitions to an administrative role at the university. So my bet is that these ladies wanting to turn in the finest performance that they can, and indeed they have pulled out some of the fastest times of the season here at Nathan Benderson Park. So really a way to cap off a fabulous career and a great season for the Lutes of Pacific Lutheran, coming through their final strokes with open water now over St. Mary's. And we've talked about St. Mary's too, a young program in their first national championship appearance. So please bring the encouragement to the line as these women wrap up their national championship appearance. It will be the Lutes across the line first, followed by the Seahawks of St. Mary's. All right, and here we go. This race is going to wrap up our Division III national champion. So it all is going to come down to points, of course. We've got 6 boats on the course right now. This is the first level 8s for Division III. In lane 2, Bates College. Lane 3, WPI. Lane 4, Ithaca College. Lane 5, Wellesley. Lane 6, Williams. Lane 7, Tufts.
Here we come, championship race for a national championship, 6 boats across. It's the first eights for Division III, our final Division III race of our 2022 NCAA championships from Nathan Benderson Park. Who wants to lead early? It looks like the Bombers of Ithaca want that early lead. And going right with them are the engineers from Worcester Polytechnic Institute. Those are your top two as they move through the first 150, 200 meters. Everybody's still in the mix here, which is to be expected with the progression. And it is, wow, a really good race up front between those two boats. So Ithaca had the lead there for the first 150. And as we come through 250, it looks like it's going to be a slight, maybe 2-foot lead for WPI.
And behind them, the next crew would be Wellesley. They have a slight advantage over Bates there. Wellesley in the blue, Bates on the far side, the side opposite from the finish tower in the maroon. But it is still Ithaca in the yellow hats and WPI in the red unisuits that are certainly setting a standard and setting the pace early in this race. As they lengthen out off of their start sequence, you can see that Ithaca is really starting to solidify their rhythm a little bit. You know, they're coming together into their base rhythm, making sure that they're going to be efficient down the course. And just as I say that, it is WPI saying, okay, we want to stick with you. We want to go with you. WPI, Ithaca, Bates, Wellesley, those are the crews that came through earlier on without having to go through a repechage to get here. So they all have one race under their belts. Maybe they practiced yesterday afternoon, not certain. How many times have they gotten to go down the course here at Nathan Benderson Park on this world-class rowing course to kind of practice their race plan, to practice their race, to visualize it, to see it, to know, hey, this race that we're about to have, that we are now getting to be in the midst of, is the one that is going to tell us who gets to be crowned Division III First 8 national champions. And as the second 500 unfolds, it is WPI who is starting to create a little bit of space over Ithaca. But Ithaca has brought Wellesley here in the blue unisuits along with them. Will Wellesley find more to eat into that lead and put their bow ball up in national championship contention?
All right, this is what I'm looking at, Lindsay. I'm looking at your defending national champion Bates sitting in 6th place at 750. They won their heat. They're sitting in last place. It is the engineers of WPI out in front, 12 feet ahead of Ithaca College. The Bombers are half a length ahead of Wellesley. Wellesley is half a length ahead of, right in front of us, Tufts, who has a slight advantage on Williams. And then it's Bates. Bates, from time to time, I've been watching their bow. From time to time, they have more speed. And what are they going to do in basically the second half of this race? Because they have dug themselves a bit of a hole here for a defending national champion and a heat winner. It's not really where I expected to see them. That doesn't mean that they can't do something extremely heroic here. But right now, WPI, as I look back out in front, has even more of an advantage. Trying to win a national championship and take it back to Lake Quinsigamond are the engineers. They have half a length, almost 3/4 of a length advantage over Ithaca at 1,000 meters. Ithaca with half a length on Wellesley.
And it is WPI breaking out that early. It was WPI and Bates that came into this as the favorites. That's why they are now over on the far side of the race course, the side opposite from the finish tower. But to go clear water on the other contender that was set up to potentially be one of the national title contenders here this early in the race is a big deal. And so if you can get inside their heads by doing that, by breaking clear of the defending national champions in that way, that's a statement right there. That is a statement that you are making. That is WPI and the Black Hole continuing to make a statement on this field by, again, continuing to take even more length. You don't have to win by a length to be crowned national champions. It's just a bow ball that you need to win by, but they want to make it a length. And if they continue in this way as they are right now, it doesn't seem like they've taken a major move. It just seems like they've been very aggressive from stroke one, and that has allowed them to extend this lead. And even if they start to go on fumes here in the second half of the third 500, we're going to allow their emotion, their energy. The coxswain will need to play on that through the third 500 to continue to elevate them. So is their emotional juice enough to carry them across the line with now clear water that WPI and the red unisuits and Black Hole have on the rest of this field?
Here comes Bates. Bates is finally getting into the mix. They have now pushed up to 4th place up there in lane 2. But it is the engineers of WPI. They have clear water on the field. They're trying to win a national championship in the Division III First Eights. They have half a length of open water. Here comes Wellesley. Wellesley has now gotten past the boat from Ithaca, and Ithaca is now dead level with Bates. This is such an interesting race. Here comes Bates. Do not count them out. It's going to be really hard for anybody at this point, however, to catch the engineers. We're going to hand it off to you at the finish line tower. Adrian, the national championship on the line.
Oh my gosh, and I am just amazed by the performance here from WPI. Just a dominant piece for them as they have pulled clear of the rest of the field. An open water lead for them. This is a historic moment for that program as they push towards the finish line. I mean, you cannot take that spirit away from them right now. But what a changeup in the scene behind them. So what's playing out behind them is going to come down to the finish line. Bates was out of it for a little bit. They've come back into contention, possibly being able to get into the medal stand. But Wellesley sitting in that 3rd place position for most of this race has moved themselves forward. They're even chipping away at the lead that WPI has. So Wellesley in that 2nd place spot. But who is it going to be for 3rd? Take a look at Bates, take a look at Ithaca, and take a look at Williams. The Jumbos of Tufts continuing in 6th, but man, what a race for that 3rd place position between Bates and Ithaca. It is so hard to tell here. Can Bates pull it off and get onto the medal stand after coming in 6th through most of this race, coming into medal contention? What an amazing piece for them. But right now, it is all about the engineers. A historic medal finish for them as they cross the line. Wellesley right behind them, and it will be the Bobcats of Bates in that 3rd place spot. Ithaca coming in next, followed by Williams and now Tufts.
All right, we're on the race course. This is final 2, the B final of the Division II Eights. And it's Seattle Pacific and Central Oklahoma. UCO is your defending national team champion. And these two boats are going to match race it down our 2,000-meter race course. And we'll see if what the strategies are here. It does look like UCO with about a seat here early, about 150 meters in. Really doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot yet. But we'll see what happens in terms of whether one of these boats is going to try to really make a move early, or if we're going to see similar speeds for a while, and then they're going to throw it to the last part of the race to try to win it.
As they come off of their start sequences here, it's important for the athletes, no matter how much adrenaline they have, to listen to their coxswain so that they lengthen out. Sometimes it happens where, man, you feel really good for about 30 seconds and it almost feels like it took zero energy to get the boat up to speed. But if you stay up too high for too long, that'll eat into what you have available to you from an energy system standpoint to be proficient down through the meat of this race, the body of this race. Rowing is 80-20 aerobic to anaerobic at this distance. So it's important, yep, we have to sprint early, get the boat up to speed, and we have to sprint late, but the majority of racing is anaerobic activity. So it's important that you're able to breathe and lengthen off of what's going on. Pay attention. Yeah, there was some free speed had early on, but now lengthen out because now we got to buckle in and do the work. And it is UCO crossing into this first 500 of the race that is just ever so slightly inching away from Seattle Pacific.
Got them both at about 36 strokes a minute, so there's no clear advantage or disadvantage there or strategy going on with respect to how many times each of these women are striking the water. And it's just about a half a length advantage for UCO over Seattle Pacific. It is nothing insurmountable, and I'm just watching the bow ball of the Seattle Pacific boat, and it's really just staying right in the same place relative to the University of Central Oklahoma. So they're staying right there is Seattle Pacific, and that's what they need to be doing. There is no reason why in the next 1,250 meters Seattle Pacific can't figure out some sort of strategy to find more speed and to try to track down UCO. Now, as soon as I say that, UCO took about a seat, but it still remains pretty steady here at 800 meters.
It did look like Seattle Pacific was making a move. The coxswain, the team, they knew, they were aware that they needed to eat into that lead that Central Oklahoma is extending. And then, of course, after they came off of what appeared to be a small move, maybe to eat into that lead, Central Oklahoma did respond. Again, Central Oklahoma as a team is three-time defending champions, like straight in a row, 2018, 19, and 2021, having skipped that 2020 championship. They have been in this position before. They've been here clearly as a team, as an 8, and they have performed here. So now they want to come out in this race, though it is a duel here, the final 2 of the Division II 8s. They want to come out with the win. They want to make a statement as well. So Seattle Pacific doing a nice job pushing them here and maybe looking to take maybe an inch back as we cross into the thousands. So was Seattle Pacific in the maroon visors on the far side of the course. For now, with UCO on the inside with the white blades, was Seattle Pacific just biding some time and now they're going to turn it on? Or does UCO have more to go?
So we will find out the answer to that question in the next 850 meters. I still have the stroke ratings relatively steady for both boats. Maybe 35 for Seattle Pacific, maybe 36 for University of Central Oklahoma. And it looks like in the middle of that UCO boat, we've got sisters Faith and Hope Brooks. And I am looking at them, and they have their hair styled the same way. They do look like, if they're not twins, that they are sisters. I don't want to be presumptuous, but with the same hairstyle right in the center of that boat, powering it along. I'm looking at Seattle Pacific's bow ball again, and every single time I look at it, it's doing something different. Sometimes, like right now, it is actually gaining ground on UCO.
Sure is.
Other times, it's slightly losing ground. But it still remains right now on the hands of the 3 women in the UCO boat when she hits the catch. So it's a half a length advantage right now for UCO over Seattle Pacific, and that is what it is at 1350. 650 meters left to figure out who's going to finish 5th and 6th in the nation in the Division II 8s.
And what better timing to find the coxswain? What is that rhythm that's allowing your team to go inching forward? Because as David said, that sure is what seems like has been happening. They'll inch forward a little bit and then sit, inch forward a little bit and sit. So with 500 meters to go, can you go, okay, this is the rhythm that's working for us. This is the technique that's working for us. This is what is allowing us to inch forward. Let's keep doing this, but we need to find a little bit more. Can you dig down a little bit deeper? What needs to be said? What needs to be felt to make that dig happen?
There's a really good match race going on between these 2 crews. We're going to hand it off to you, Adrian, at the finish line.
All right, and in a dual race, this is really what you want to see. You want to see a close race coming all the way down the race course, because that's what drives these athletes. They want that competition right next to each other. And the coxswain looking across, I can see that Seattle Pacific coxswain looking across her right shoulder at UCO. UCO, the defending national champion here for Division II, finding themselves in the petite final. They want to wrap up this championship with the best race possible. So both of these crews just really going after each other. They have raced previously this spring. Seattle Pacific, coached by Caitlin McLean, she's really turned around that program, rebuilding them as they went through some coaching changes, and then just with COVID and training irregularities, Seattle Pacific coming through their season looking really, really strong here, and a absolute delight to have them at the national championship. UCO just barely holding off, playing a little bit of defense out front as they try to hold off this late surge by the Falcons of Seattle Pacific coming into their final strokes. But the Broncos, sensing they want to cross that line first, they're holding Seattle Pacific off just by about 3 seats, winding this up. Seattle Pacific trying furiously to take away a little bit of that lead from the Broncos, but it will be UCO crossing the line first. 7 seats for them over Seattle Pacific to wrap up this petite level final for the Division II eights. All right, and here we go. This is the big show here for Division II. This is the grand final for the eights, and this is what is going to decide the team championship for the Division II teams. So in lane 4, farthest away from us, will be Jefferson. In lane 5, Mercyhurst. In lane 6, Western Washington. And in lane 7, closest to shore, Embry-Riddle.
Here at the start of the Division II eights grand final, where a national champion in the Division II 8 will be crowned here, the final race of the day here at the 2022 NCAA Championships. It is Jefferson and Mercyhurst who qualified direct from the heats. By winning their heats, they came direct to this final. Western Washington and Embry-Riddle came out of the reps to make it here. So Mercyhurst and Jefferson, you will find them on the far side of the course. It is Jefferson way over on the far side, Mercyhurst then in the white hull with the green unisuits. with Western Washington next to them in the visors, with Embry-Riddle on the inside with those yellow blades. Now, Mercyhurst, with the green over there, is the crew that qualified direct from the heats in both the 8 and the 4, which shows the depth of their program and the largest potential to take the national title. They also just a few moments ago took the title by walking through Embry-Riddle in the 4. So if Mercyhurst decides to put their bow ball in the lead by the time they cross this finish line, they will have taken the 8, the 4, and the national title in doing so. As we saw in the 4 with them, they weren't the fastest off the line, and it didn't seem like they had moves down the race course, but it just seemed like they took little by little, stroke per stroke, to make it happen. They just stayed tidy, internal, focused in their lane, and let the race happen one stroke at a time by having the best base, being the best overall piece.
Look at this race to end day 2 of the NCAA Rowing Championships from Nathan Benderson Park. You have 3 boats, and whoever is pulling through is in the lead. It's maybe just the slightest lead I'll give to Jefferson. Otherwise, it's dead level between Mercyhurst and Western Washington, and Embry-Riddle is only a deck behind them. So basically, we've got 20 feet separating these 4 boats for this national championship race, this grand final in the 8s for Division II. Couldn't get any better at this point in the race. 600 meters in, and any one of these 4 could absolutely win a national title.
You sure could, and it's all about, okay, that much is done. The coxswains making sure that they're staying internal. Okay, so we executed the first 600, 700 meters of the race. Now it's time to execute the next 1,200, 1,300 meters of this race. And as we continue to speak, it looks as though these crews, if you look down the bow balls, down the line here, their strokes, they were almost going stroke per stroke in unison across those 3 lead holes of Jefferson, Mercyhurst, and Western Washington. And at this point, as we cross midway through the second 500, it almost looks as though Western Washington took the lead, and then it switched back to Jefferson, and then Mercyhurst poked through. So if I'm in any of these holes, I'm just trying to stay internal and focused and push one stroke at a time, because it's too close to call at this point.
Unbelievable. It is dead level still now between Jefferson and Mercyhurst, 3 feet ahead of Western Washington. 3 feet separating 3 boats here for first, second, and third place in the nation in the Division II 8s. And still connected with all 3 boats is Embry-Riddle, closest to us here on the wave attenuator in lane 7. Embry-Riddle absolutely still in this race, being stroked by Shelby Ernst, who knows this race course as she was a member of Sarasota crew in high school. Now it's Mercyhurst at the halfway point. Are they going to maybe have the lead? I think they will by about a foot. Just a foot lead for Mercyhurst at the halfway point, at the reset here, ahead of Jefferson. Jefferson 4 feet ahead of Western Washington.
I've coached crews in Division II collegiate rowing, NCAA rowing, here on this very course, who were bow ball to bow ball like this, battling it out on this very course, and then it came down to just a few inches as they crossed the line. So even though it's nerve-wracking not to have a major lead, all you need is that tiny little bow ball to be out in front. It might come down to a photo finish, as we've seen in some of the races already this weekend, but a win's a win. Over the course, to put this in perspective, over the course of 2,000 meters, that's 5 laps on a running track if you aren't particularly familiar with rowing. 5 laps. Go out and run 5 laps, and then you're literally the tip of your tennis shoe across the line before someone else. Imagine having that happen in your Division II 8 championship, national championship race. This might be your first race here. This might be your last. But everyone out here on this course right now, no matter whether it's your first or last, knows that they want to lay down the best race that they've ever had so far.
Well, this is one of the best races I have ever seen at Nathan Benderson Park, Lindsay. This is still a 3-foot separation between 3 boats. I have them all at 36 strokes a minute. Is anybody going to go? Or are we just going to come down to the line like this? This is unbelievable. Whoever is in the water is in the lead between Mercyhurst and Jefferson, and those 2 boats are only 4 feet ahead of Western Washington. That is where it stands as we come into the last 500 meters. Starting to see Jefferson. Maybe they're making a move right there just before 500 meters to go. But what does that mean? It means nothing, because Mercyhurst is pushing back. Unbelievable racing here. Any one of these 3 boats could win the national championship in this Division II 8. We're going to pass it to you, Adrian. This is an outstanding race.
And I think this is the true definition of the word epic right now. There is less than a second separating first through third right now. And you've got to look at Jefferson up at the top of the screen and Mercyhurst just back and forth depending on whose blades are in the water. But Western Washington also right there, literally within 1 second of each other, all three crews. So it's going to come down to who has this best sprint. This is exactly what a national championship is all about. And it's all about who is poised to make their move at the right time. Can Jefferson hold on to maintain that lead? Is it going to be Mercyhurst to take the whole thing, to take that whole national championship? They were runners-up in 2019. They want to be on the podium. These top three crews, I mean, they're going to make that stage no matter what. It just depends on the color of the medal hanging around their neck. So as they come into the spectator area, get those cheering lungs out because this is going to be a barn burner. Look at Western Washington pouring it on here as we come to the line. Mercyhurst just maybe barely holding them off. Jefferson fading back to third. We've got to be able to see whose blades are in the water at the right time as this comes down to, again, another photo finish. Look at Western, look at Mercyhurst, that coxswain, you can see the intensity in her body as she's looking across at the Western Washington boat. This is just phenomenal. This is going to be an epic finish. You heard it, and I'm not going to make a guess as to who it was first across that line. Jefferson here finishing in third for what was a phenomenal race for them. And now here comes Embry-Riddle wrapping up a great season, and it looks like Mercyhurst taking the win 0.03 of a second in front of Western Washington. And ladies and gentlemen, as we wrap up racing for the day here and crown our first national champions of 2022 with both Division II and Division III, we will have an award ceremony. You can see that stage set up almost directly in front of the finish line. We'll be back in about 30 to 40 minutes, depending on when we get all of our paperwork in line and get the crews back on shore. So please stick around for that award ceremony. Championship.
First of all, we'd like to congratulate all their teams on an outstanding achievement and thank our hosts, the University of Central Florida, as well as Nathan Benderson Park Conservancy, for their partnership, their commitment, and their success in hosting this championship. Presenting the awards today will be Amanda Knight. She is chair of the Division II NCAA committee. Will the following individuals please come forward to receive your awards or as a team? The 2022 NCAA Division II for runner-up is Embry-Riddle, with a time of 7:49.6. Allie Fife Winslow, stroke seat. Gwendolyn Powell, Helen Carey, Kristen Vigna, and coxswain Lauren Enders.
It's just so they don't see the microphone in the picture, I guess.
Yeah, we might as well go over here, huh?
Yeah. And now your national champion for Division II in the fours, Mercyhurst. Grace Scapura, Emma Lassig, Audrey Smith, Tegan Spracklin, and coxswain Sienna Zona, winning with a time of 7:47.4.
Now let's introduce the varsity eights first. The second place boat in this year's NCAA Division II 8 Grand Final, Western Washington. Haley Moss, Lindsay Froelich, Morgan McIntyre, Clarice Rulin Hicks, Maddie Bangasser, Yuki Saburi, Olivia Pels, Sarah Ernst, and coxswain Adele Houston. And now for this year's NCAA champion in the Division II 8s, Mercyhurst. Olivia Avery, Ann Catherine Mueller, Anna Magic, Elizabeth Northrup, McLean Zajacek, Natalie Padell, Autumn Kearney, Erin Jackson, and coxswain Gabrielle Cristello.
And now for the Team Championship Awards. The runner-up for this year's Division II National Championship, Western Washington University. We'd please like to have the coaching staff and support staff for Western Washington as well.
And now for your 2022 NCAA Division II Team Champion, Mercyhurst. Will the athletes, coaches, and staff from Mercyhurst please come forward to accept your award? Congratulations, Mercyhurst, your 2022 NCAA Division II team champions.
Okay, moving on to Division III. First off, again, I'd like to congratulate all of our Division III athletes and coaches and support staff. Once again, we'd also like to thank our hosts, the University of Central Florida and Nathan Benderson Park, for hosting this 2022 National Championship. Presenting the awards for Division III are Tracy King and Kristen Miley, members of the Division III NCAA Committee. First up, we will award the third place boat in this year's NCAA Division III 2v8 Grand Final.
From Ithaca, Edie McRoberts. Erica Elseason, Carly Whalen, Brenna Hanratty, Erin Trojan, Glenn Hartley, Emma Hamill, Emily Lighthall, and coxswain Carly Wolfart. Congratulations again, Ithaca, our third place winners in the Division III second eights.
And in second place with a time of 7:05.0, Wellesley. Adeline Van Buskirk, Zipporah Cohen, Anastasia Brooks, Gaia Krishna, Cora Barrett, Cricket Lieberman, Eleanor Antizana, Emma Dean, and coxswain Colette Kennedy. Congratulations, Wellesley.
Now for your Division III second eight national champion, Bates. Genesis Busey, Lydia Barker, Olivia Jacha, Mary Trafton, Abigail Samoski, Olivia Bernhardt, Hope Stamp, Daria Lee, and coxswain Isabella Sobolewski. Congratulations again, Bates.
And now for the Division III first eight, top three. In third place, Bates. Ollie Young. Oops, sorry. Come on over. All right. Ollie Young, Casey Winter, Maeve Mikulski, Lillian Kinder, Katerina Dixon, Sophia Morota, Molly Connors, Eliana Weissman, and the coxswain's name. What's her? Lucy, coxswain Lucy.
Congratulations, Bates. And now for second place in the Division III First Eights, Wellesley. Anya Hanachak, Katie Ball, Caitlin Severin, Olivia Gorman, Annika Hallstrom, Katie Moser, Haley Liu, Emma Angel, and coxswain Bella Santos.
Congratulations, Wellesley. And your Division III First Eight National Champion, Worcester Polytechnic Institute, with a time of 6:55.2, Melissa Bazakis Chamberlain, Alexandra Helene, Megan Tupaj, Caitlin Keene, Jillian Early, Marin Cork, Emily Adams, Ashley Schuliger, and coxswain Logan Rinaldi. Congratulations, WPI. Great job, ladies. Thank you. And now for the team presentations. In fourth place, Ithaca College with 43 points. Please come forward, as well as coaching staff and support staff, alternates.
Congratulations, Ithaca. And now for the third place team overall, WPI. Will the athletes, coaches, and support staff please come on stage to accept your awards? Congratulations, WPI.
And your second place team for Division III, Bates, with 50 points.
Congratulations, Bates. And now for your 2022 NCAA Division III overall team champion with 51 points is Wellesley. Congratulations.